Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series Season 2 2021. And today marks round 2 of the series as hosted on Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PC platform in collaboration with the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy. Our schedule, as always, is depicted here on screen. We kick things off with the driver's briefing at 7:25 this evening, the times in British Summer Time, or UTC +1, that's BST British Summer Time. Qualifying will commence 5 minutes after the driver's briefing, and then with the 15-minute qualifying session to determine who will be on pole for the 75-minute feature race. We'll be getting that race underway at 7:45. After that, of course, we'll be bringing you the post-race podium interviews with our top 3, the podium finishers, at roughly 9 o'clock, bringing to a conclusion what is expected to be another very tight, tense and twisty round of racing as we take to a very different circuit from what we saw in the season opener. In the commentary box today, you'll have myself, as always, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and this show is being brought to you on 3 different media platforms tonight in the English spoken language. Firstly, on the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, that's NXTGEN Racing. Meanwhile, we've also got the NXTGEN Racing Facebook group. If you go on Facebook groups, you'll be looking for NXTGEN Racing there. And last but not least, on my own personal Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch. Now, before we get down to introducing the circuit, the standings, and the drivers once again, and taking a look at what's going on in the final practice session, it's only appropriate that we start to talk about our chief sponsors, our principal partners, without whom it would not be possible to bring you this series. So we start off, of course, with the SimGrid. Now, with regards to the SimGrid, if you want to know a little bit more about them, they are a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competizione, being the dedicated space for a growing sim platform. It's been growing over the course of the last 3 years, going into its 4th year very soon, and it's got a bright future ahead of Assetto Corsa Competizione, and you want to go to the SimGrid, it is the home for competing against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events. On top of that as well, we must also say hello to Coach Dave Academy and introduce them. And Coach Dave Academy, or CDA in short, is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Whether it's a case if you just want to gain an extra second or a tenth of a second, Coach Dave Academy is the place to go for all the information you need to take your racing to the next level. And again, without them, it would not be possible. What with Coach Dave Academy providing us with a good number of prizes within our prize pool for this series, and also the SimGrid helping us out with the organisation aspects and also the stewarding of the races. We have a professional member of the SimGrid team working with our own stewards from NXTGEN Racing to bring the best possible stewarding experience. Now, coming away from our sponsors and our partners to the season. So we've had 1 of the 8 rounds so far, and you can see it's greyed out there. Round number 1 last week at Donington Park in the United Kingdom. A very good and gruelling opener at the British circuit for the season. A lot of our drivers falling victim on turn 1, lap number 1, to a major incident, or more running down through the latter corners after turn 1. But besides the point, it was a very chaotic race for a good number of drivers, and it meant that the field ended up turning upside down to an extent, and we saw some very close battling and drivers having to scythe their way through the field. And we now move on to round 2 today. As you can see it there, Zolder is the 14th of September 2021, and this circuit very different from Donington due to its mixture of corners here. There's no particular one way of dealing with Zolder. It is the case that you've got to go with the setup that's most comfortable to you. And as we now look at our standings after the first round, we can see Andres Mesa there leading the championship on 72 points after taking the win in the season opener. But he is being pursued by the likes of Ralph Piringer and also Kieran Prendergast. The Piringer and Prendergast having that last lap battle, which saw Prendergast make the critical mistake that lost him out the chance of P2. Harry Phillips there in P4 as well, ruining a mistake in the pit with regards to changing tyres and having an extended pit stop in the Bentley Continental when he was on course to potentially be the winner of the race or in a close-knit battle for the win at the very end versus Mesa. But of course, it's only race number 1 of 8, and there's plenty more points up for grabs. And as we look further down our top 10 there, you can see Andrej Jacklin, the Slovenian there, in that P8 position right now, doing a very good job in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage on those 54 points, and he is the second leading Aston Martin driver, we should say, with Fabio Chiena there, the third of our Aston Martin drivers in the top 10. Also Ollie Moss, who may be arriving tonight in the McLaren 720S GT3 there on 50 points in that P10 position. Looking further down, in from 11th to 20th, rounding off our top 20 there. A good number of drivers here who had solid results around, but albeit perhaps a little bit disrupted by the incident, particularly on the open lap at Donington. We can see Ant Brown there, as he likes to be known, in short, or Anthony Brown in full, in a P13 on 44 points. We've also got Eduardo Tripiana there in the Porsche 911 and P14, chasing down Ant Brown as rapidly as possible, albeit it's only after one race. And they're rounding off our top 20, Emil Blaine. What can the Aston Martin Racing driver do today, given the fact that he had a good experience last time out at Donington, and I think his confidence will be growing. Just outside the top 20, going from 21st to 30th here, you can see Gareth Mills just missing out on the top 20 finish on the season opener. Gareth Mills, of course, being that driver who's continuing to grow day by day, and a lot of drivers are looking towards him. Indeed, a lot of support within the stands for Gareth Mills. But also further down, we've got Paul Scott there in P24, and in the McLaren 720S GT3 on 26 points. He'll be looking for a better result today. And Max Malliard there in P30. How it went wrong for one of the two Jochen Zweisinger drivers there, and it just did not work out for Max. It worked out for his teammate, but it wasn't to work out for Max, and he'll be looking to have a very strong result tonight to make up for the losses at Donington. And then rounding off our 40 drives in this series so far, we can see a number of drivers here were not able to compete last time out or did not score any points, and we will be seeing a good number of these drivers out on circuit today. For example, I believe we do have the P39 man there of Walter Lux. He'll be taken to the circuit in the McLaren 720S GT3, and I believe it's also the case that we're not going to be seeing Brandon Warren today in that P32, one of our limited. I believe he might also be the only Nissan GTR Nismo driver, but when Warren does arrive, and I believe it will be next week in round number 3, you can expect we're going to hear the roar of the Japanese machine. And now let's come onto the circuit then. So, Circuit Zolder. We're here in the Heusden-Zolder region of Belgium for what is a very technical circuit. With 11 corners, albeit you could say the corners are summarised into 11 nominated corners, although you could break them down even further. We'll treat it as 11. Starting off with Erster Links, the left-hander that opens up the circuit, and we can see the opening half of the circuit being all about medium speed apexes from turn 1 through to turn 4, and then we've got the run up to the Kleiner chicane, the small chicane at turn 5, where we're going to the second half of the circuit, where the circuit really turns around and goes into these extended runs up to heavy braking zones, where you've got the run from turn 5 all the way up to turn 7, the Villeneuve chicane, the Charles Villeneuve chicane there, and then it runs out into turn 8 through to turn 9, and then we've got the run from 10 down towards the final chicane at turn 11, the Jackie Xbox chicane, or we refer to it as the Xbox chicane from this point onwards, and indeed a very difficult corner, and it leads us back onto our start-finish line. This image, the track map, brought to you from Pit Lane 02 on the wikipedia.org website. We're very grateful for the information provided to us by wikipedia.org and the contributors there. And with regards to the rules tonight, we are of course using the balance of performance of the 2020 base variant as made available in Assetto Corsa Competizione for all the races of this series. And in the race itself, there will be a mandatory pit stop, which will require drivers to take on at least 1 litre of fuel, but it is optional whether they decide to take tyres. Of course, tyre changes are completely optional. Whether they feel the degradation warrants a tyre change or not, that's up to our drivers. There's also no defined pit window, so our drivers may choose when to pit. They can pit after a couple of laps, or they can pit right at the end. And we saw, particularly for our race leaders at Donington, and pitting as late as possible seemed to work out compared to being caught up in the midst of all the strategy at midpoint of the race, where we saw a lot of our drivers decide to pit just before the midpoint or at the midpoint. But the leaders went right at the end, and it seemed to work favours. Now, we do have our driver briefing due to occur in just under 7 minutes, but whilst we are waiting for our driver briefing, it's only appropriate that we head to some of the live pictures. And right now, what we can see is that it's quite a cloudy Belgian circuit here. We were anticipating rain. We've got a lot of cloud over the circuit right now, as we do see Jesse Monrose here coming across that start-finish line to go on to another practice lap. But it's been a big question all the way down the paddock over the course of the last week with regards to whether we are going to see any rain at the Belgian circuit. And in this practice session, no rain. Some drivers who turned up earlier on in the week recorded a lot of rain. The clouds have been coming over very thick, but you can see there in the 30-minute broadcast up in the top right corner of your screen, there is no clarification of rain at this time. It's just cloud. But we've got a very low track temperature of only 21 degrees centigrade, 15 degrees ambient right now, and the track is starting to move into its optimum phase with a lot of rubber being run down in the practice session here. But as we look around, we can also see here the distinct GG driver of Ethan Faulkner as we jump from the BSP, a racing driver, Jesse Monroe, rows to Faulkner. The Irishman here currently making his way around the circuit, coming into the right-hander here, which I believe that is the right-hander of turn 9, going into Jochen Rindt through turn 10 there and heading up towards the final chicane as he comes down towards the Xbox chicane here, doing everything he can to try and just find that little extra bit of time. As we see the pit entry there, you just drive straight on beyond the chicane rather than needing to brake and turn through it. But right now, as Faulkner makes his way around here, he'll be looking for another solid result tonight after having to do a lot of recovery work with the damage he picked up at Donington to bring the car home well inside the top 10. A brilliant drive from Faulkner. As we look a little bit further down in our practice times at the moment, we can also see here we've got Robert Velkoski, the back-to-motion driver in the Porsche 911, as the cameraman pans round, just making his way right now towards the end of another practice lap. And as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, do not be shy, feel free to say hi, and I hope you're all doing well with it being Tuesday right now, and that you've got your week off to a flying start, much like our drivers will want to get their racing off to a flying start tonight, and we hope you are all doing well. Do let us know what you're thinking with regards to tonight, who you're cheering on, or what your expectations are for the racing, but we are just patiently waiting right now for our drivers to finish their practice session, and indeed that driver's briefing only 5 minutes away. Now we've also got Ralf Piringer here, our P2 man from last time out, racing for the Jochen Schweizer powered by BMW team, and as he makes his way through that final chicane, the German driver here, the number 405 car, looking very fetching the M6 as he charges down towards turn 1. And this circuit is going to work quite well for the BMW to an extent. The BMW having a lot of straight line speed, but it will also be hit quite hard in those medium speed apexes, particularly turns 2 through to 4, which he's making his way through now, where you've got to balance that act of keeping the speed, but also the rotation through the corner as he comes through 3. We can see Piringer there doing a nice job of just coming flying through the corner and doing everything he can to keep that car nice and balanced. But meanwhile, a little bit further back, we can also see we have got Chris McKenna here, making his way around, the British driver, also from Distinct GG in the Bentley, as he makes his way down towards the final corner. Looking at very fetching indeed in the Bentley Continental here. Very nice paint job on that car, I must say, as he comes through the chicane. The number 92 car here, just waiting to go racing. All of our drivers absolutely itching and trying to find every little bit of time out on circuit right now. And our leader currently in this final practice session, we can see he's parked in the pits right now. Harry Phillips, the Cohesion SimSport driver here, who, remember, lost out last time on the potential win or the podium due to a pit error. He'll have spoken to his pit crew tonight, and he'll hopefully have it all sorted out between himself and then. He set the fastest time in this final practice session of a 26.868, but we do wonder whether there's more time out there, and it may be the case that he set on, say, qualifying settings for his car or qualifying setup, whereas other drivers might be getting in their final practice race setups. Now, it should be pointed out with the fact that we do have that big question of weather lingering over the circuit right now. It could be the case at any point we may see a rain appear in, say, qualifying, alternatively over the course of the 75-minute race. And when that rain does appear, it's all going to be about knowing when to switch to the wet compound. And that's something that will be on the minds of our drivers here as we do check in with race control very briefly. And I believe all our drivers just gradually piling into the driver's briefing room right now. They still do have the best part of 2 minutes, but we're going to hop in there and just be silent in there. So we'll be able to keep talking, but it'll just be the case that we're not going to be talking too much as we are waiting to hear from our driver steward. And I believe that is going to be Kevin Smith giving the driver's briefing tonight, but we will wait and find out. I'll let you know as soon as we're about to get underway with that. But all of our drivers are just making their way into the driver's briefing room, and when we do get underway, it will be the case that Kevin Smith will be telling everyone the law and any special rules that we do have tonight, as we see all of our drivers making their way into the pits right now. Velkoski, he'll likely be pulling in at the end of this lap, and we've also got Adrian Loisinger here making his way through the Dream Pace racing driver here in the AMR Vantage V8 here, switching to Aston Martin, of course, with the horse on the side. Lovely livery there as he comes out the corners there through the Villeneuve chicane, through turn 8 and down into 9 right now. And Loisinger looking for a good result here tonight at the Zolder circuit as he comes through in the number 58 car and now into a Rindt corner before heading up towards the Xbox chicane. Now, as we look back to our notes at the moment, we're not expecting anything else major at this point, but we do only now have a minute to go before that driver's briefing, and we can see Loisinger will most likely be jumping to the pits in a very short order, as pretty much we've got everybody in the room right now. And I think once everybody's in, it will be one of those situations where we will see Kevin Smith come into. Of course, you're not able to see this room because this room is on a Discord server, but I am in there, I can assure you, as we see our drivers parking up. So we are due that driver briefing any moment now. as everybody has pulled in to the pits, and our remnant drivers will be pulling in very shortly. So just give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and we should be getting that briefing underway. As everybody is now in the pits. No, we've only got Velkoski out on circuit right now. I think Velkoski will be due to hop in to the pits any moment as well. Just waiting for that driver's briefing right now, ladies and gentlemen, and any moment now it should be Kevin Smith getting us away, the NXTGEN Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione GT3 organiser, the brains behind the operation here, and we look forward to seeing what he's got to say. We've got plenty of drivers' faults to bring you once we get qualifying underway. We are just waiting for the arrival of Kevin Smith in that briefing room. Without further ado, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Any moment now. I think there's a very slight technical issue that's being encountered at this point in time, but we should be able to alleviate that technical issue. Here we go.
Good evening everyone, and welcome to NXTGEN Racing. Round 2 at Zolder. As we can see right now in the free practice, it is cloudy. As you all know, I'm sure you have done plenty of practice and seen there's the possibility of rain. So I would definitely make sure that you pay close attention to the weather throughout, just in case it does start raining mid-race, which is possible. A few things to note tonight. Lap 1, please take it easier than we did last week. We will be enforcing harsher penalties for lap 1 incidents. This is to try and minimise the risk of what happened last week, and also collisions during the first laps. If it is wet, please take your time, and of course we all know what ACC is like in the wet. The cars can slide very easily, or you can lock the brakes up easily, so please bear that in mind. A few other things to run over. During qualifying, no queuing in the final sector. Please use the full lap to find yourself some space on track. There is, I believe, 28 of you tonight racing, so it should allow you that little bit extra room. Also, if you are on an invalid lap or a flying, or sorry guys, if you've invalidated your lap or you've just come out the pits, please move over for anyone currently on a flying lap during qualifying. Pit entry and pit exit also. It is known that some people will go flying down the final straight before we come back on the start-finish to enter the pits. If doing so, please be very careful of cars in front of you, because of course they might not be pitting at the same time as you, and could brake in the braking zone and you cause a collision through that. On pit exit also, please keep within the white line and hold a tight line round turn 1. This is just to allow everyone that's racing to get round the outside of you very cleanly. And apart from that, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the general chat. If not, we will get qualifying underway in 1 minute. It doesn't appear we have any questions, guys, so we will get qualifying underway in approximately 30 seconds. You're now free to leave the room and have fun and have a good race.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost ready to go. So as we come back to the live pictures, we heard the pre-race drivers briefing there from Kevin Smith, and essentially talking about the fact that our drivers are expected to be a little bit more cautious on lap 1 as we're about to get underway with the qualifying session. So as we now get going, in all the case, all of our drivers will be coming out the pit lane as rapidly as possible, as Gav Mills there just gives a brief tap to the wall, but I think all is okay and the car is fine as everyone is getting their qualifying tunes in place. And it is the case now. We have 15 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? That's the big question to be answered. Let's find out. And we can see immediately as we have got Jacqueline here making his way around right now in the Aston Martin. The Food Point Racing Team driver here coming through turn number 4 and heading onto that run towards turn 5 as rapidly as possible. And he comes surging down at the straight here. It's a case of building up as much speed as humanly possible as he now makes his way into the chicane. And we'll see here with regards to the chicane, some drivers will take it very aggressively, others will be very cautious through the chicane. It's a gamble when you're trying to straight line it and take it aggressively, because you can end up bouncing over the curve at the Kleiner chicane, the small chicane. As he now makes his way through the Villeneuve chicane here, very smooth indeed. And we'll bring you an onboard lap from some of our drivers in due notice as well, to give you an idea of exactly how they are taking it based on ride on board. But as we look around, we've got Marcus Fox here, the Fox Sim Racing driver, coming through the sequence of what is turn 8 and heading up towards turn 9 right now as he makes his way in the long wind up into the right hand. He's got a little bit of track ahead of him, and I do believe that is the Ferrari there of what I believe is Seedor just ahead of him. Lucas Seedor there, Mr. Kuro Neko there, as they make their way down towards the chicane. And in fact, we are going to ride on board with Seedor here as he takes us around for the opening flying lap of this qualifying session of his own. So as he comes out of the final corner, then building up the speed to go across that timeline here, moving over to the right hand side very gently here, going into turn 1, into the first left-hander. And as he goes through 1, you can see trail braking in there, going towards the apex curve and then running as wide as possible not to touch the gravel before coming into the right-hander at turn 2. He's got a bit of traffic, however, who've just come out the pit, so this is a spoiled lap to a degree already. You can see backing it off a little bit as he comes through 3 right now. The Aston Martin ahead of him, moving out the way as he flashes his lights, now comes into 4 here, completing effectively the first half of the circuit as he now soldiers his way up towards the Kleiner chicane. Turn 5 coming up here, and he's going to be looking for that 150 metre board as his brake marker. In fact, the 100 board there as he comes charging into the corner and trying to attack it as much as possible. You can see the straight line in it over the chicane there and bouncing off of the exit curve, the exit apex curve, as he now comes through the left-hander here of what is turn number 6 into the Villeneuve chicane of turn 7 as he comes through here, trying to straight line it again, cautious not to tap the cones, I should say, as they will be track limit penalties being applied to invalidation lap. As he now comes through 8 here, full attack on the exit of 8, having to balance that throttle though because it's second to third gear corner as he makes his way up into 9, now braking just after that 100 metre board and coming through the very gradual corner before stamping down that throttle, coming through Rin and now heading down towards the final chicane here, heading down towards the X chicane, and he's going to be looking at to brake as heavily as possible. That 100 metre board coming down through the gears into left, into right. And again, riding nice and high on those apex curves, trying to abuse the chicane to straight line, but runs a little bit wide. Pardon me, runs a little bit wide there out of the final corner. He crosses that line, but it's an opening time in from Seedor, and it is what is a 28.575, but immediately Marcus Fox goes a little bit faster, a 28.464. As we see there, Harry Phillips only setting what was a 29.859, but we do believe it may be the case that Phillips has got a lot in the tank and he's just getting himself warmed up right now. As we see, we've still got clouds over the circuit here. We have not got any rain forecast at the moment, but rain could arrive at any moment, and when it does, it is going to upset things, I'm sure, and it's going to really change the complexion of the proceedings. As meanwhile, we can see Walter Lux here, the 2G SimGrid driver, making his way right now around through 7 and 8 and heading up towards 9. Now, when I was checking in with some of the drivers ahead of tonight, as we see, unfortunately, in the Twitch chat there, CJW Racing, Chris Wall there, having some technical difficulties, and I'm very sorry to hear that, Chris. Hopefully we can get you in, but if not, it's very unfortunate. We will miss seeing you out on circuit tonight, but hopefully we will have you back next week. When I was making my way down the paddock, a couple of drivers were available for a quick chat as they were heading to their cars, and one driver, to say the least, who was available was the Code Brown driver of Ant Brown. Here we can see the Briton making his way around the pits right now, coming out of the pits, I believe, as he makes his way down towards turn 2, standing on that right hand side, of course, now to be very wary of the fact drivers are coming through. And what Ant was saying to me was that he is, of course, from Team Code Brown and Slip and Grip Sim Racing, age 36, and he's been racing for the last couple of years because we didn't really get to catch up prior to round 1. And it is the case that going into this series, the McLaren, the 720S, is a new car to him. So he's picked this car to essentially expand his capabilities and develop his expertise even further. In other seasons, he competed in the Audi R8. He's still got a lot to learn, but he's hoping for a top 10 finish overall this season, and we look forward to seeing what Ant is able to do as he makes his way up the rise here towards turns 6 and 7 as he comes downhill through that left hand, trying to hold it to the left hand side of the circuit as much as possible to set himself up for the chicane. Some other drivers who we had the chance to speak to, we also had a chance to catch up with Martin Pavusen, and we can see him here currently P21 on quite a slow up of 31.0, but I think he's going to be going for something a bit faster soon. The SKM AMG driver from the Netherlands here, and when I spoke to the Mercedes driver, he was saying that for tonight he expects it's going to be difficult to match last week's result, the P25, although I think it might be the case for Pavusen given the fact we haven't got too many drivers here. We've got at the moment roughly 30 drivers taking part. It could be the case that he could better his result, and he has high hopes, to be fair, and he does like this circuit. He's raced in this circuit previously, and it suits the AMG with a lot of bumps and tight corners, and he is hoping for rain so he can have some fun with the traction control and also let the Coach Dave Academy and Dave Pearl logos on the vehicle, which we can see some of them at the abstract distance here. He's hoping they will be guiding him to a decent result, so we look forward to seeing what he can do as he's gone very deep there into Villeneuve, so that has not worked out for Pavusen, as we can see he's just run off into the gravel and he rejoins. They're trying to stay out of everybody's way. He's going to need to avoid to do that, of course, on his main qualifying lap and definitely in the race. That's not going to bode him too well. But meanwhile, as we come over to Andre Jacquelin here, it is the case that as he makes his way, he's got a little bit of traffic behind him there. I believe that is Fox just coming through, and he simply let the Porsche driver through there so as not to be in the way. When I had the chance to speak to the Slovenian driver here, what he had to say to me going ahead to tonight is it's a technical circuit in his mind, and there's a few places for safe overtakes. And given the fact that he expects there to be some degree of rain, his goal will be a top 10. He reckons it's going to be an interesting race. It's going to be a very uncertain race, and that's what for him will make it an interesting one, because of the fact we have that unknown entity of the weather. Could it swing in the favour of some drivers, particularly if we have any rain maestros here? That could really help out certain drivers who may not be as fast in the dry conditions. As Jacquelin makes his way right now through turn 8 and heads in the long run down towards 9, just building up towards another lap. Currently on a 31.434 in P20 provisional as it currently stands. Now, a little bit further down the order at the moment, we can also see, or further down the order, I should say, it is Gareth Mills here, just making his way through. He's got a car behind him, and I believe that might be the Aston Martin, by looks of things, of Emil Blaine, unless I'm very much mistaken, which I think I might be mistaken, because that is not Blaine. In fact, that is a different Aston Martin, and Blaine, well, he's got quite similar colours to the Aston Martin we were looking at there, but Blaine here making his way into the final chicane here as he comes into the Xbox chicane here. He comes through it. He's currently provisional P19 or 35.223, but that is the case there. Well, that was the last lap he did. He's actually on a 30.102, I should say, as he makes his way across that timeline, but still got plenty of time to potentially improve here. And the NRT Nordic Racing team driver was saying to me in the build-up to tonight, where the fact that he expects Zolder to be a fun little track for him, as he's got some experience here. He hasn't driven here in a long time though, so it's a case he's going back to an old haunt, and a top 15 tonight would make him very happy, and he knows he's been a little bit modest here, but he doesn't dare to shoot any higher at the moment. He's very modest to me in the conversations, but setting his expectations at quite a low level for himself. I think he's just trying to acclimatise himself to the racing group that we have here. Of course, our 40 drivers when they're all out on circuit together, but even so, we do have the best part of what is 29 drivers out on circuit at the moment. That's quite a tight field to say around the tight and twisty circuit of Zolder. As we check in with race control again here, I think we may be getting a word with regards to what's happening right now. No, in fact, we're not getting any word with regards to any further proceedings, so we are just pressing on. Nothing from our stewards. They're just getting themselves set down in their stewarding box with all their cameras, so that way they can take a look at proceedings. We can see Tim Afeo, I should say, the Tim Afeo driver in the number 47 car in the Lamborghini, flashing his lights. He comes through turn 2 here. He's got a little bit of an obstruction there of an Aston Martin that's struggling to get out of the way, and that's the difficulty here as well in qualifying. If you come out onto the circuit, you might have drivers come surging through it, and that's what Kevin Smith was warning us. Oh, goodness me, we have got a Bentley there into the wall, and I think that's the distinct GG driver in the Bentley. We've got yellow flags there coming out to turn number 4, and they're having to stay over on the parking point of the circuit there because of the fact they're right in the run-out area of turn 4, where everyone's trying to get up to speed in the run down towards 5. But that looked like a very nasty instant for our Bentley driver, and as a result, now it is the case. I think that was Chris McKenna who's jumped to the pits with that damaged car, and now had to do some repair work on that car as he's got it up on the jacks already. But right now, with 5 minutes of this session to go, we see it is Harry Phillips right now who's got provisional pole of a 27.039, and it looks as though Phillips has decided to park up for the time being and simply place his bet on taking that pole position. He is 4.5 tenths clear of Lucas Seedor right now, and Seedor in that provisional P2. He's got quite a gap as Seedor as we see him making his way out of the Kleiner chicane and heading over the brow of the hill down to turn 6 and into the Villeneuve chicane at 7 right now. But the Ferrari driver here, the best of the rest outside of Phillips, is very strong pole time at the moment, as we do see Seedor there just cutting a bit of the chicane. I think that will be an invalidated lap, but to be fair, that 27.513, a very impressive lap in that Ferrari, and I think for Seedor, he'll be very happy to be lining up on the front 2 rows. If he can be on that front row with Phillips, that's definitely going to work out to his advantage as he makes his way around the circuit. And as we look a little bit further around, once again, another driver who we said has joined us tonight as of the second round. I wasn't able to take part in the first round. The TUG Sim Grid driver, Walter Lux here, who's currently in provisional P10 on what is a 128.422. Doing very well is Lux right now to stay into that top 10. He's only got, however, a 1.5 tenth advantage over Adrian Leusinger in P11. Leusinger in the Aston Martin. We see Lux here getting ready to go once again. Just backing it off the brakes there a little bit in the runs of the chicane to give himself a little bit of a gap to the driver ahead of him, and now he makes his way around, and Lux only the best part of 1/100th of Daniel Korogowski right now. And we see Korogowski here making his way through the chicanes. We've got a yellow flag there at the Kleiner chicane. They've just changed it to a green flag as they've just cleared. As we do see, he's made his way onto the circuit. He's got it wrong under braking there. But Korogowski, the best of our McLaren drivers as it currently stands, will Lux be able to usurp him at the very last moment. As we just see there, Peringer getting into P6 with what is a 128.107. And the BMW driver right now, as he makes his way down towards the final chicane here, looking good, the BMW driver, and using that straight line performance of the V8 engine with the twin turbo to his advantage. As you see, everyone continuing to try and get more and more laps in here. We only have got 3 minutes to go now, so we do effectively have roughly 2 laps of all of our drivers here, perhaps a third lap if they're very lucky, but most drivers it will be 2, and it's going to be a case now that every second counts out on the circuit. As meanwhile, down in P24 we have Christian Ablasser here, the TUG Racing Esports #green team, or representing the green portion of the team, making his way through turn 2 and through turn 3 as Mills they're staying out of the way of everyone in the McLaren 720S and just trying to let everybody through and get everyone onto their flying laps, as we do see a bit of a traffic build up there, but that is the natural part of the course. But as we look around, we can see our drivers making their way around on the circuit right now and continuing to try and set faster times. But it is the case, it's going to be a long way to beating Harry Phillips' pole time, I reckon, right now, as everybody's trying to get in those last couple of laps. Now, another driver who I had the chance to speak to very briefly, following on from speaking to him after the in the build up to the first round, was Tom Gander, and just trying to find Tom down the circuit. Cannot seem to see Mr. Gander at the moment, so as a result we will try and come to him in a brief while. But we've also got here Paco Lara, the prototype racing team driver, making their way through 9 and 10 and heading down towards 11 here. We can see in the McLaren 720S going charging it down towards the braking zone for the chicane here, and one more lap for the McLaren driver, and let's jump on board and see what they're able to do on effectively what is going to be their final flying lap. So coming out of the final corner then and heading up towards turn 1, we'll first see that timing line. Will it be an improvement? Moves up to P11 there for 28.530, and will they go again? It looks like they're going for it, really attacking into turn 1, but a little bit wide of the apex curve. Then you can see they had to lift off the throttle rather than get on it as soon as possible. And as they come through turn 2 here, it's all about balancing that throttle and having that confidence to build up the throttle as soon as you pass the apex of the corner. Through 3 here, very nice rotation now. Coming up into 4, this one is all about a little bit of trail brake input, and you can see the rear end of the McLaren sliding through the corner there, and very nice run as a result, as Lara's trying to get into that top 10 at last possible moment here as they go into the corner chicane, braking at about that 100 metre ball, in fact about the 70 metres, and coming through here, attacking the chicane very nicely done indeed. A very stable run there through Lara, and now coming down through 6 and into 7 towards the Villeneuve chicane they come, and into that heavy braking zone here, and they'll be looking to try and straight line this across the two apexes. It's looking good, and as they make their way through 8 here, it's going to be one of those laps I think where Lara's going to be absolutely on it as they now come out of turn 8 and head down towards 9, charging up towards the heavy braking zone here and looking for their marker. And as they come into the corner here, trying to get the car stopped and then started again as soon as possible, and as they rotate through now through Rin and heading down towards 11, the final chicane here. This is looking a good lap. Will it be enough to get them inside the top 10? Let's see as they make their way through. Can they nail this braking zone here? It's looking smooth so far. One final run then to the timing line, and what's it going to be for Lara as they come down to complete their current lap? Will they be able to improve? And they improve to a P8 there with just a little bit of time left to go for one more lap if they so desire. But that is a 1:28.167. A good lap there from Lara, and we will wait and see what else they are able to do now over the course of the race, unless they're going to go for it again here, which it would be a little bit surprised if they're going to try and put in a third successive flying lap here. But if they're in the rhythm, then let's not take it from them. As meanwhile, our championship leader after round 1, Andres Mesa right now, the distinct GG driver in P3 as it currently stands. The Spaniard here, 6/10 off of Harry Phillips' pole lap, but you can see Mesa trying to get the most out of the car, and his teammate of course even Faulkner in P4 right now. So the two distinct GG drivers are going to try and lock out that second row, and if they can do that, that will give them a good amount of tactical advantage going into the race. As we see now, we've got the countdown and the wait time here as everybody's trying to get in their final qualifying laps to get themselves set for going racing. And as they make their way around, we can see we've also got the driver a little bit further down here. I believe it's Alex Ward in the pits right now, the Bentley driver, last of our runners. But what he was saying to me, the Briton, was the fact that he enjoys the challenge of a wet race. He's looking for the wet circuit, but he's looking forward to taking part as well. And that's what it's all about, the Bentley Team M Sport driver, as he's part of. I think he might be the last of our runners right now, as we see drivers starting to come into the pits. And we see Mesa right now still on that flyer. Has he got traffic ahead of him right now as the Caravan's out? No, he's at the head of the traffic. Is he coming into the pits, or is this the last attempt at trying to snatch pole? He's into the pits. As we see Pieringer in as well. So pole position in the end goes to Harry Phillips, ladies and gentlemen. A brilliant pole lap there of a 27.039. And now we get ready to go racing. And the rain has arrived, ladies and gentlemen.
So watch out for slippery curves and remember to brake early.
The rain has arrived as we clear the screen there, and it is the case right now that everybody is going to be looking to jump to their wet setups as quickly as possible here, and they will need to have nailed the wet setup because it's going to be a very different set of conditions, and it's going to wipe all the rubber off the circuit, which just makes this even more tenuous right now. As we take a look at these live pictures, and we can see the camera just panning back, and with Phillips taking that pole position, you do have to wonder, is he ready for this one? I'm sure he's done plenty of practice as we look on board right now, looking very composed in the cockpit and waiting to go, and he'll be taking us around for our opening warm-up lap before we go racing with the manual double file rolling start. As then we look a little bit further down and we can see it's Marcus Fox in that P7 position, albeit Mr. Fox right now just waiting to go racing as we look in board with the Porsche driver here. A good qualifying session for Fox, and I think he'll be trying to use the Porsche's strengths, particularly that rotation in the rear end, in order to get himself up into that top 5. Meanwhile, a little bit further down, Fabio Chiena here in P15, the Swiss driver from Tamiya Racing Team in the Aston Martin. What will he be able to do from P15 today? But we look back up towards our starting positions right now. We look at the front of the pack, and it will be Harry Phillips who takes us away for the warm-up lap in the preparation for the rolling start and for us to go racing. But we can see that track temperature has dropped down to 19 degrees centigrade, and we've got an ambient temperature of 14 degrees right now. So the temperatures have come down a little bit as well, and this is going to be a major juggling act for all of our drivers to contend with, as that rain has finally come on at full flow, and it is going to be a difficult one here. Now remember, driving in the wet is one of those situations whereby you have to be careful with how the car handles and just manage getting on the power. Our drivers will be utilising their traction control, of course, to try and balance out the ability to put the power down versus keeping the car as steady as possible. And that is saying as well, how confident do our drivers feel in terms of attacking with the throttle? As we look a little bit further down the order, we can see Gareth Mills here down in that P28 position. And the South African here, he's got it all to do from the back of the field, but will he be able to close up some places? Will he be able to get himself into that top 20? I'm sure he'll be thinking about that now in these changeable conditions. But we also look around here, we can see Martin Ulrich in P18, the Mercedes driver here from M Technology, having a reasonable qualifying session, but he has got Effenstedt just ahead of him, and we see Rainer Effenstedt here in the Austrian machine from TUG Racing Esport. And in that McLaren, a very nice livery there indeed, a very distinctive livery, and everybody starting to head their way down through the Kleiner chicane here. It's all going to come together for our drivers as they all try and get a little bit more temperature in their tyres here, and we can see everybody just clustering up and trying to get around as soon as possible, so that way when they do go racing, those tyre temperatures are up as high as they possibly can be, because in these conditions, those wet tyres, you need to keep those temperatures, you need to keep them in the ideal range, and particularly not let those pressures get too high or too low, because otherwise it can be a very tricky compound to drive on. As meanwhile, we look back inside our top 10 and we can see it's Kieran Prendergast here in that P5 position. Wasn't able to get himself onto the second row. It was a distinct GG lockout on the second row of Mason and Faulkner. But what can the BP Racing driver do from that P5 position in the Ferrari? Can he make some gains on the opening laps, or will it be the case that he's going to stand at position and look at the long game? Some drivers will be looking to hold on to their positions going into the opening part of the race, where other drivers will be looking to gain as quickly as possible. There's different styles of driving at play here as well, and we did see that at Donington, albeit a major incident at Donington as well, which really disrupted the order. But as they now make their way down towards the Kleiner chicane, it is Harry Phillips who is going to take us away for the start of the race. And it's green, and we are go, go, go for race number 2, round number 2 here at Zolder, as they make their way down into turn 1. And we can see immediately a lot of our drivers going on the early offensives. Prendergast gets the move on Faulkner into turn 1, and you can see that Seedorf, they're really struggling as Mason's going to place as well. And Seedorf is going to try and go round the outside here. Oh, there's Prendergast, in fact, who's trying to make his way around the outside here of Seedorf as they come through turns 2 and 3. And a little bit further down there, you've got Korogowski down in P10. As we can see, Prendergast has tried to make his way around. He's going to go around the outside here of what is Seedorf. Is he going to be able to hold it? That is very nip and tuck there between the two Ferrari drivers. Great racing respect shown between them. But look there at Faulkner. He's trying to come through as well as he makes his way along. And as they come charging on, it's 3 wide in the Ferraris here down to the Kleiner chicane. As the camera pans back, I believe that is still, by the looks of things, that Prendergast at the head of the pack. The two Ferraris very similar in look, but I think that is Seedorf who's really dropped down the order there. And oh goodness me, that's Marcus Fox, who's just had a major incident into the wall, coming down into 6 here, and he gets the car back under control, just about able to hold it together and avoid tapping anybody as they all make their way down into Villeneuve. All of our drivers have safely made it through, minus Fox there, but Fox has returned to the circuit with some damage to the car. But my goodness, what a start it has been, as we see they all make their way through now, turns 8 through to 9, and looking a little bit further down there, we can see Marco Ticini here from the Ticini Volanti car in the McLaren here, making his way up into turn number 9 as well. And it's a case he's having to defend here versus Velkoski, who has dropped some way down the order, as we see Ofeo meanwhile in P19 in the pink Lamborghini. You can't miss it, holding on to that P19 position very well. As they make their way across the timeline to complete lap number 1, it is Harry Phillips already building up a lead of 1.5 seconds ahead of Andres Mason in P2. Then we've got Kieran Prendergast in P3, Faulkner chasing after him in P4. Then it's Piringer in P5, it's Lucas Seedorf in P6, and Seedorf was the one who we saw drop out in that freeway fight between the Ferraris coming through into the Kleiner chicane on the opening lap. Paco Lara in P7, Lara gaining a place on the opening lap and having to go defensive here versus Lux. Walter Lux going around the outside here of turn 2 and into 3. And remember, there's the grip to do on these wet tyres. It's not the case as a definitive racing line. You go where the tyres are able to give you the grip, but Lux having to fall back there as there's not enough space in order to get the move done as they make their way through 4. Meanwhile, behind it's Pastores in that P10 position. Well, he's in P10, and he's got Jacqueline who's just jumped ahead of him as they make their way down towards the chicane for the second time of asking here. And as they come charging down into turn number 5, you can see all our drivers making it through. But from what is Pastores, then we've got a 1.5 second gap to Adrian Neusing in P11, just outside the top 10. He's got Fox behind him Jacqueline Fox having that major incident over the brow of the hill here in the run down through 6 and heading up into 7 on the opening lap. How can the Austrian get back into the proceedings now? Anthony Brown in P13 as they make their way down. I think further back there we've got a number of cars coming together. We've got a major incident kicking off further back, and you can see in the rear of your camera shot there as we take a look back. I think that's not a fail. I think that was Jesse Monroe's getting caught up as we see Velkovsky there parking it on circuit. Monroe's definitely got caught up in that. We did see the BSP Racing at BMW being caught up in the instant there. It was at the back of the camera shot, and I think they've all come together in the run down through 6 and into 7, and nobody really wanted to yield as it was starting to turn into a 3-wide situation. But you can see here Monroe's really struggling through turn 9. It's gone way too deep in the Bentleys, and also what looks to be there, that's Max Maliar coming through on the side there as they make their way through 9 and up into 11 as they come down into the heavy braking zone here, and we can see that's the case as they make their way, and Maliar going all the way round, and that's Gareth Mills tucked in well behind right now as they make their way through at the chicane and onto their 3rd racing lap. As they make their way down across that timeline, we continue to watch here as they make their way in towards turn number 1, and you can see Alex Ward in the Bentley here just behind Chris McKenna. McKenna breaking away, and it's Ward from the Bentley team M Sport who's at the head of this little pack in the back. Oh goodness me, and Afeo's had a spin there. We just briefly saw a snippet of him out of turn 1. The rear of that Lamborghini has gone at some point, but Ward versus Maliar right now in the battle for P22, and we can see Monrose and Mills queuing up behind the M Sport driver here as well. It's a case he's just simply holding them up a little bit, and I think he's just trying to get himself up to a rhythm right now as Maliar really wants to try and come through. But meanwhile, up the lead, we can see it's the case that Phillips really running off into the distance right now. He's got a 4-second gap already on Andres Mesa. Look at this. To give you an idea, after only 2 laps, that's the gap he's built up. As further back right now, we can see in the pursuit of the podium, Ethan Faulkner in the middle of your screen as he comes into turn 9 right now, the distinct GG. But further back, we can see Lux versus Lara here. The 2 McLarens are going to war, and as they come through turn number 9 and the cameraman pans round, we can see they're still side by side going through Rint and heading up towards what is Ix. As they head down into the final chicane here, it's Lara ahead right now, but Lux all over the back of his fellow McLaren driver. Of course, they're racing for themselves and also for separate teams, but neither one of them wants to be the 2nd place McLaren in this race right now. They both want to be out front, and they are fighting for this as we ride on board with Lux here in the car, and you can see the wiper absolutely having to work furious right now because the rain is quite intense. Not the most intense that we have seen at the Belgian circuit, as we see Lara gets it a little bit deep there, and Lux is looking for a move, but he can't quite find it at the moment as both drivers are struggling for that little bit of extra grip that's going to give them the advantage. But you can see Lux trying to look for the outside to inside into 2, but Lara parking it on the apex there, very wary of Lux's attempt to come through. And as they now make their way through 3 and up into 4 once again, it's the case that Lara's just breaking away a little bit, or Lux has had to really just back it off and wait for another opportunity. They do have a 1.4-second gap to Andrew Jacqueline, who's in P9 right now, and Fox is a bit further back in P10, 3.5 seconds back. So as a result, they do have some space to play with, but they've also got to be wary of the fact that this is a 75-minute race. This is not a race where it comes down to just being 10 minutes. They've got a long way to go, and just a bit of patience could go a long distance. As we see further back, speaking of patience, Korogowski here stuck behind Ant Brown. He's been behind the Britishman for some time right now as they make their way through 6 and into 7 once again. The 420 McLaren looks for a move on the inside here versus Ant Brown, but he can't quite get it. But he almost goes into the back there, and I think he's actually had to come out the slipstream on that inside line in order to try and stop the car in time. But Korogowski, they're coming in with a lot of momentum, and that looks very close for comfort, but he got it stopped. And behind him, Ulrich here in the Mercedes in P15 doing everything he can to close up. As we see Kieno going on the inside here versus Ulrich into turn 9. He's gone very deep on the brakes, and he's just made it, and that is Kiena working it to literally the maximum extreme on the brakes. And now how can Ulrich come back here as we see Kiena defending to the inside here, and Ulrich I think is not going to be able to come back at him right now, but that was right on the limit of the brake threshold, I'm sure, for Kiena right now, and it may be the case that his heart might be pounding a little bit harder in his chest than he perhaps originally anticipated as they make their way across the timeline. And we look back from Kiena's car right now, the Swiss driver here making his way into turn 1 once again, and these two I'm sure we're going to see trading places a little bit more, but it was a brave move from Kiena, and he made it work wonderfully. If it hadn't worked out, we may have been saying something else about it, that he broke a little bit too late, but that was right on the limit, and he knew the break point was there as he makes his way through turn 3 and heading up into 4 right now. And you can see Ulrich just struggling to get the car through the corner, but we can see it's the fact as they make their way into turn 4 here, how Kiena is having to take a slightly off normal racing line there in order to carry the momentum all the way through the corner. And Ulrich looking very strong under braking here into the Kleiner chicane, but you can see he has to fall back. There's no way 2x2 can go through here as they come through the chicane then and up the hill into turn 6. Now, meanwhile, as we look away from them, and we look a little bit, well, I was going to say look away from them, but I think Ulrich here is going to be looking for a potential move. He's getting very close, but he's not able to make the move at this current point in time as they all come over the curves there. And look how shiny slick in the water, the rainwater there on those curves at turn number 7. You will not want to run over those and put the power down too soon, otherwise that is going to cause the tyres to absolutely spin up. But you can see now Ulrich starting to fall back, and instead Kiena starting to close in on Brown ahead of him. Now, meanwhile, we look back up to our drivers ahead. Prendergast here in P3, chasing after Andres Mesa right now. The gap between these two, a sizable one of what is, as we wait for our time screen to update here, approximately 3 seconds. As we see, we've got Emil Blaine into the pits already. I think the saying has gone very wrong for Emil Blaine in this race. But meanwhile, a little bit further behind, we can see Lucas Seedor here chasing after Piringer. And Piringer having a good start. Seedor really having a disastrous start out of our Ferrari drivers who qualified in the top 5. Seedor, of course, starting on the front row, and it all went very wrong on the opening lap, and he's now trying to get himself back into the proceedings. But remember, qualifying was in the dry, and here we're racing in the wet. And it's the effective case that now he's got to try and find a way to acclimatise himself to these very challenging conditions as they come down into their chicane, the Klein chicane once again. But look behind, there's Andrew Jacqueline, who's got ahead, it should be pointed out, of Lara a couple of laps ago. We didn't see that on camera, but the Slovenian right now doing a fantastic job of now coming through what is turn number 5 and heading over the brow hill to 6 and 7. But you can see Lara there very close behind, and the McLaren driver trying to find a way into this one, but he's not quite able to. And I can only imagine the spray that's kicking up in Lara's face right now. And look at Fox. I mean, to give you an idea of a driver who's right there as we ride on board here with Fox, he's got the spray of both drivers plus the rain to contend with. That wiper working as hard as it possibly can right now. That's German engineering at its highest efficiency as they make their way down towards what is turn 9. And you can see under braking here, it's the case. Well, all 3 drivers taking very unique braking lines there, and Fox taking perhaps the most standard line of the 2. Lara going for a very early brake, Jacqueline going for a very deep brake, and as a result, you can see now it's the case that as they make their way into 11, it's Lara looking for a move on the inside. He's going to try and go for it here, and we're getting the prime view from what is Fox's car. But you can see as they come through the corner, a little bit of contact there, but Lara just not enough alongside, and Lara making that mistake and that contact. It means that Fox now comes through as they come across that timing line here. They're side by side in the run down towards 1, and Fox is going to go around the outside, but as the camera pans around, you can see Lara's gone deep on the brakes here. The 2 of them literally only millimetres apart from one another, and the Austrian's not going to give this one up versus Lara as they come down into turn 2. But this is giving Jacqueline a bit of a breather here, and Fox holds the inside in 2, and into 3 they come, and they come into line disturb mode now as they make their way through. I think Lara's going to have to wait for an opportunity coming through 4 and into 5 if he wants to come back as soon as possible right now. But a brilliantly timed move there from Fox, and Lara just a little bit unfortunate to receive a small amount of contact with the Aston Martin of what was Jacqueline coming out of turn number 11 there. But as they make their way down, they head into turn 5 once again. Oh, goodness me, that's Walter Lux. Lux has had a spin coming out of the chicane, and he's going to drop well down the order here as all of our drivers come over the hill, and I'm not sure where he's going to come out, but here's Korogowski. There's Lux now coming back through. Korogowski's already come through, and meanwhile further back here we can see that in the next pack of drivers coming through, it's the case that Ulrich is still chasing after Brown here. So Lux has dropped all the way down to P13 with that one mistake through the Kleiner chicane, and I think he's just simply attacked it too hard, and it's caused the rear of the car to lift too much and spin as he's trying to apply the power to get the traction. But as they make their way through 8 and head up towards 9 right now, you can see at the rear of your camera shot that's Kiena trying to find a way past Pavisen as they make their way down into the braking zone here, and Pavisen has to go defensive versus Kiena here. Kiena really coming alive, and the Dutchman is saying no way are you coming through unless you can absolutely beat me on the brakes here. The Mercedes driver knows he's got a very fast Aston Martin driver behind him. As we see there at the head of your camera, it's Brown versus Ulrich. Ulrich going for the feint into turn 11, trying to get Brown to go deep and be distracted from his braking point, but the Briton holds on. It's not a Code Brown moment for the Code Brown driver as we see Blaine is still in the pits. I believe Emil Blaine may have got a lot of damage to the car, and the team are working furiously with the car at the moment as we can see there, but I think that may be a retirement for Blaine. It'll be our first retirement of the night of our 29 drivers who were able to make it for qualifying and also the race. We unfortunately had to say goodbye to Chris Wall due to technical issues, and we hope he'll be back in a week's time. But as they all make their way around right now, we can see it's still the case that we've got Brown here. We've been given a little bit of a respite as behind him we see Pahisen and also Kiena right now. Kiena coming from the inside through 2, 3 and into 4 here, and I think the Aston Martin driver's finally got the upper hand on the Mercedes driver. It's taken him some time, but he's got it done, and now they make their way way down towards what is turn 5 again, but you can see at the front of your camera here, we've got Ulrich versus Brown, and it's the case that Brown goes defensive, Ulrich goes round the outside there. They went side by side through the chicane, and they've proven you can go 2x2 through there. As we see, we have got drivers now falling a little bit further back, and I think that's Evenstedt there, who's just made his way through, and he's come up into P17. He's just got past Pofisen, and Pofisen having a really... Oh, goodness me! And that is Ulrich. Ulrich has spun coming through the Villeneuve chicane. I'm not sure if there was contact there, or whether that was purely for his own devices, but he's had a spin, Ulrich, and all that progress he's made, he's now lost and got to do all over again, and that's the difficulty in these conditions. You think you've got the pace, you think you've got it mastered, and then they just come along and surprise you. And the M Technology driver is now back in P18, and he's got a 4-second gap to close down to his fellow Mercedes driver, Pofisen, up in P17. As we see just behind Christian Ablasser here, making his way, well, he's just come out of these corners, so the camera's a little bit delayed there, but as he makes his way underneath the billboard there into turn 11, we can see the Austrian driver here trying to chase after our P18 man. And I think just getting a good amount of pace in right now and keeping it nice and sweet. A little bit further down, we've got Alex Ward here as we see a 10-second penalty for Jesse Monrose. Now, I'm going to check in with the stewards very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to that. We are just waiting for the update from the stewards, and as soon as we get it, we will bring you what's happening. But this is the battle for P22. It is Ward versus Mills, as we see they make their way through right now, and we also just got ahead Ticini as well. So it's the three drivers actually battling for P21. Ward right in the middle of the sandwich here, of the two McLaren drivers, and as they come through turn 2 right now, these guys, not as fast as perhaps our leaders, but having a good little battle nonetheless. And of course this will be for some good points and a little bit of pride on the line as well, as they make their way through turn 3 and up into 4. And we can see the Bentley very composed and very steady, but the McLaren's having the better rotation through the corners, and that's what's giving them the lunge on what is the Bentley coming down towards, say, turn 5 on these long straights. But the Bentley having that good acceleration as well in the lower end of its RPM range. It loses out in the top end of the RPM due to all its power being concentrated earlier on in each gear. But you can see the differences between the two cars here and how all three drivers are literally matching one another very well. But we should go from the back of the field towards the front of the field, and we can see our race leader is still Harry Phillips, the Keystone Motorsport driver, holding on to that lead by now a gap of over 8 seconds. Can anybody stop him? That will be the big question, as we see Andres Mesa meanwhile in P2 just holding on to a nice gap to Kieran Prendergast. Prendergast down in P3 right now, 4.6 seconds back, and he has got a comfortable 3.8 second gap to Ethan Faulkner, who's in P4. And we see the Irishman here in the distinct GG machine, the Ferrari making its way out of 3 and into 4, and then we've got Piringer here who's holding on to P5 for now. But look at Lucas Seedor, who is closing up. Now, it should be pointed out that on that last lap, Seedor was actually a bit slower than Piringer by 0.8 of a second. But it is the case right now, these two have been running relatively similar pace when they've nailed their respective laps. So Piringer, the BMW driver here, really having to try and keep the Ferrari man at bay right now. But we will wait and see. But further back here, and this is the battle for what is P9. We can see Jacqueline coming through in the green and silver Aston Martin from Food Point Racing. Whereas behind you, you've got Loisinger there, who having got up into P10. Loisinger is reveling in this opportunity to finish inside the top 10 as they make their way down the hill in towards turn 7 right now. And you can see Loisinger falling back a little bit there, but definitely this trade-off between the two drivers in terms of their strengths. We can see Loisinger looks very strong through these chicanes. He just seems to have the pace to close up into the braking zone, but also through the apex of the chicanes itself. It just seems to have a lot more pace. It's when we get onto these medium speed corners, that's where he loses out a little bit, but he does have the slipstream in the straight line runs, particularly in the run down to 9. As you can see there, again, he just takes a 10th out of Jacqueline coming through the corner, and as they make their way down towards 11 right now, with 59 minutes of racing to go, we've cleared the first 15 minutes and a little bit extra. You can see these guys really nipping up right now in terms of their lap times and approaches, but Jacqueline going a bit deep there into 11. This could be an opportunity for Loisinger. He's going to be right over the back of the Aston Martin driver as they come down to the timeline here, and you can see it's a case of Loisinger going early to the inside here as Jacqueline takes the racing line, and I think this is a bit premature from Jacqueline. He's aware of the fact he's got Loisinger there, but Loisinger not close enough, not enough straight there to look for a potential move, and it's the case the Swiss driver right now instead holding on to that position as they now come through turn 2, and you can see a nose to tail here, no changes between these guys as they then come through 3 and head up into 4. It is as it was, and they make their way through right now, but the two of them are looking very close in terms of lap time, and only 2 attempts a daylight between them as they make over. It looks like Loisinger's gone a little bit wide there out of 4, and as a result now he's going to lose out a significant period of time versus Jacqueline. Just pushed a little bit too hard there as you see Pastoris there looking for a potential opportunity. The Rinaldi Racing driver not able able to find it, however, and the Swiss are actually getting a little bit wrong there coming out of the turn 5 chicane. You could see the rear end just started to destabilise through the second apex, and as a result he's had to lose some time now, and he's had to shrug off some speed in order to keep the car steady. But that was a near miss moment for Pastorius there, and we can see Korogoski in that P12 position is trying to close up to the Ferrari driver ahead of him. As we do check in with race control here, we are not seeing anything for the time being from race control with respect to what's happening, but very unfortunate. We are hearing, however, that Emil Blaine is retiring the car. He is experiencing connectivity issues, so he is concerned about potentially causing issues with other drivers because of his latency, so he is retiring the car, and we can expect Blaine to return again at another point this season, most likely in round number 3, but very respectful of Blaine to do so here. If that's what you're wondering why he's just stuck in the pits right now, it's because of connectivity issues, which is very unfortunate, but we look forward to seeing Blaine once again as they all make their way around here once again and head on to what is lap number 12 as I'll try to surge down into turn 1. Now, meanwhile, race leader continuing to dominate up ahead right now. The 8-second gap right now and just measuring the pace. His last lap of 33.282, the fastest lap we've seen from anybody. Phillips really just charging right now. This is absolutely phenomenal stuff. In fact, that gap opened up to 9 seconds. Now, our time screen is updated here, but meanwhile, a bit further back, I can tell you that it's the case that Piringer has been closed up by Lucas Seedor here as the German is feeling that pressure now from Seedor as they come up into turn number 7 again. And as they flow through the corners here, it is going to be one of those situations where I think it's building up to a crescendo in terms of battle, but still, they've got a long way to go here. And the question is for both drivers, who wants the position more, and do they potentially fight as they make their way down into turn number 9? And as they come into the right-hander, it's the case they stay as they were, but you can see there how Piringer really struggling to get his foot down through the corner there compared to the Ferrari behind, and Seedor effectively having to take his time through the corner. So I think he's got a lot more potency and grip there, but he just cannot get it deployed because he's got a bulking BMW right in front of him and he's got to be aware of it. But I think if Seedor can find a way to anticipate that, then we could see a move on within the next couple of laps because they make their way down towards turn 1. This is where the BMW will open up that gap slightly because it's got the better straight line speed. We can also see there a dry line starting to form, as I believe within the next 30 minutes we are going to see a change in potential intensity of the rain here based on our forecast right now. We'll wait to see which way it goes, whether the rain is going to get lighter or heavier, but we can see as they make their way through turn number 3, the Ferrari driver all over the back of Piringer here, and we jump on board with Seedor as he comes through, and you can see just making his way through turn 4, and the different lines again, you can see the Ferrari driver, the Polish driver, just able to take so much of a tighter line compared to the BMW driver in front, and this is the difference between the two. The German has to use his straight line speed to keep him safe, whereas Seedor's got to use his apex speed and his command of the handling to stay right there with the BMW and then try and make a move happen when Piringer is most vulnerable, as they now make their way through 6 and head up into 7 here. But you can see it's in these longer runs, those longer acceleration zones, where the BMW is just able to stay alive. As we see Seedor there taking a good cut of the Villeneuve chicane. I think that was right on the limit of what's legal as he now makes his way through 8 and heads up into 9. And look how close he is. He's going to go for a move here as they make their way down. It's the case that Piringer's going to go defensive on the inside as they come down into 9, and it's no way through for the time for Seedor, but he's looking very aggressive as they come out 9 and into 10. It's side by side. They give one other space, and Seedor's got the run on Piringer, or has he? As Piringer holds the inside now into turn number 11, into the Xbox chicane they come, and it's the case that Seedor has got the move done for now. But as they make their way out of the corner here, we ride back on board, looking back from the Polish driver's Ferrari here as he comes charging down towards turn number 1 onto lap number 14 they go here, and who's going to hold on for that P5 for the time being? I think Seedor's got it. I think he will have the run through the apex here, and as he now makes his way up into turn 2, I think Piringer has to be patient and recognise, right, if we can't beat him in terms of race pace, we're going to have to beat him on strategy or some other way. And meanwhile, as these guys are coming to the conclusion of their fight for the time being, we now look a little bit further down that order once again. And we can see Anthony Brown here, and Brown in short. He's under pressure from Lux as Lux is trying to recover what was a good start, and a mistake saw him drop well down the order. He's only 4 attempts off the back of his fellow McLaren driver here. We're looking at Brown, of course, the lead of these two cars as they make their way through turn 2 and head up in towards turn 3. As I say, we are starting to see that dry line form. So as a result, some drivers might be pulling off of the dry line every so often just to get a little bit more water onto the tyre. tyres and keep the pressures at that optimum, keep the temperatures at the optimum. It's what you'll do in the wet weather conditions when you've got that dry line forming. But we can see here it's the case that Lux right behind Brown as they come down into what is turn 5 once again, as they make the way in. No change. But meanwhile, further back, we can see Evenstedt under attack here from Parisen. And meanwhile, he's got the Mercedes driver of Ulrich behind him. So these three all nose to town. We can see there Kiena also closing up as they make the way down the hill here through 6 and into 7. There's no change between the 4 of them right now, but this is building up to something as they make their way through at Villeneuve. And I do think it's the case right now that Kiena's just going to simply have to pace himself to these guys. And remember, because we do not have that mandatory pit window, but we do have that mandatory stop, which one of these drivers might consider pitting really early in order to try and undercut the drivers ahead of him. I think if they're going to pit this early with the changeable conditions, it would be a very, very risky call. But we'll have to wait and see as these 4 are coming together very rapidly. But meanwhile, Brown versus Lux here, no change. But you can see Lux getting ever closer to the back of the Briton. And the Briton's got it wrong there through the chicane. And he has to take to the runoff there. And as he goes across the gravel, Lux able to gain the place through Brown's mistake. Brown down to P14. Meanwhile, Lux up position. I think further back we have had a little something happen here. We've lost a driver. We've definitely lost a driver. It's Ulrich into the pits here. Ulrich is coming in early, so he's deciding to go for the undercut on the drivers around him. Perhaps he feels as though he's being held up too much and needs to go for that early strategic call, but he is the first driver to pit for what we believe would be a scheduled stop here. Now, this is a shock, but we will wait to see what's going to happen, as meanwhile it'll be Ticini then, who's now up into P19 as he makes his way around right now in a very peaceful P19. Nobody really put any pressure on him. He's got Chris McKenna, who's the best part of 3 seconds back on him, but we are seeing more penalties coming, and we should give you an update on these penalties, folks, as to why they are being given to drivers. So we start off, of course, with Jesse Monrose here, the BMW driver from BSP Racing, the Frenchman, the number 77 car. This was due to contact with car 46, and 46 is Robert Velkoski. It's what we saw earlier on. Remember when we saw these guys coming down through turn number 6 in the distant camera shot, we saw a major incident occur, and Monrose was into the left-hand side wall from their perspective, the right-hand side wall from our perspective in the run 2-7, but it was because of the contact and swerving following the contact. So as a result, that's a 10-second time penalty. We've also had a drive-through for car 47, and that's for Timo Feo. Now, the Lamborghini driver here, who we try and find, well, Ofea has already retired from the race, I believe, so Ofea's not in this one anymore, but we have had the retirement, and that was due to shunting car 404 and making contact with car 404, not to use as extreme language, and that was Max Mallion. That would explain why the BMW driver here is so far down the order and really having to try and recover himself into this race. The German not having a happy race. Once again, much like at what was Donington, it did not work out for him, but the 404 driver continues on all the same, so that's what happened. And we've also got a qualifying ban for Tim Feo because of the fact that he aborted out of the race by looks of things following the assignment of the drive-through penalty. Now, whether it was a connectivity issue or whether it was in response, we cannot say, folks, so please do not pass judgment. But we know that because the drive-through was not served, that Feo will have a qualifying ban for round number 3. We've also had a warning to car 77, and that's Jesse Monrose, who's just come into the pits, along with Alex Ward here, and that warning is for contact under braking, contact with car 46, and car 46 is Robert Velkoski. So Velkoski has been right at the centre of a number of incidents here, none of them his fault, as we've also got 15 seconds being applied to car number 7. That's Alex Ward, who we see parked up here. He's taking that 15 seconds now before his pit stop for the fact he was too far back to, well, he hit the rear of car 92. He attacked from far too back, and car 92 is Chris McKenna, who's making his way here on your live pictures through the Kleiner chicane right now. So those are all of our stewarding decisions as they currently apply, ladies and gentlemen. And as we can see here, we are looking in the chat. Roy Weller there saying go McKenna, death behind McKenna just now. And we take a look at what's going on here, and we can see Velkoski just tucked in right behind. And it's good to see Roy in the chat cheering on McKenna as he makes his way for 8. But he's getting it very slidey. Then we've got Velkoski build up a lot of pace here in the battle for P19 as they come up into the heavy braking zone. But it's the case Velkoski not close enough to go for the move right now. But we will wait and see as they come out, and Velkoski having a poor run out the corner. Does he, as we see Mills there gets it wrong just on the right side of your camera and goes a bit deep off the corner. But meanwhile Velkoski getting closer and closer to the back of McKenna, and McKenna really struggling, it would seem, for the pace compared to the Porsche behind him as they make their way out of 11 and go on to another lap very shortly onto their 17th tour of the circuit. as they cross that timing line here and as they charge all the way up towards turn 1. We can see the Bentley having that acceleration compared to McKenna, as we believe it's a stop and go 30-second penalty for Ward for speeding in the pit lane, which is only going to add even more frustration to the Bentley driver down in P26 as they make their way through turn 2. Meanwhile, we look at McKenna and Velkoski continue to battle here, and Velkoski all over the back of McKenna as they come through turn 3, and as they make their way through, you can see Velkoski just run a bit wide. They're taking too much speed on the exit of 3, and he's getting very bold as Velkoski. He's trying to find a way through here, but he's going to have to do it on the track rather than trying to find it around the edge of the track, because right now those conditions are just so treacherous, and to go even one wheel off could spell a end to his race. He makes his way through the chicane here, and it is the case trying to close up once again on the Bentley driver. The Bentley driver just seemingly having an answer to everything that McKenna does for the time being as they come through 6 and down into 7. As they make their way heavy on the brakes, it's going to be a move here, but it's the case that Velkoski, I think Velkoski locked up under braking, because we could see he had to snap to the inside at the very last moment there, and it was either a lock-up or he under-anticipated how much McKenna would need to brake, and we can see we've got Phillips coming through here. Phillips, our race leader, making his way through these back markers. The blue flags are out here, and I expect that with Velkoski moving out of the way immediately, it will be Phillips who will be getting what is McKenna to move out of the way in the run down towards 11. As the camera pans round here at a snail's pace, we can see, yes, it's the case that McKenna moving out the way there. An opportune moment, in fact. I think McKenna's actually gained a little bit from this, as we see the drivers now making their way through the chicane once again. As they come through it, we do have Loisinger into the pits as well. Adrian Loisinger into the pits and down into P18 as it currently stands. These guys coming through right now. We'll see where Loisinger is once this is all over, as Loisinger is coming out right now, but McKenna and also Velkoski getting ahead, and just behind, I believe Mills is now starting to catch up to these guys, as we do have is Andres Mesa also coming through in short order. But we look back at Velkoski right now, and he is still hunting down McKenna in the battle for what is P18 out on circuit, but with the strategy we believe this may be the battle for P19 or P20 as they come roaring out of turn 3 once again here. That Bentley just holding on for the time being. Meanwhile, in P4 right now, we do have Faulkner here in a bit of a peaceful place right now. He's got a nice gap of 6 seconds to Lucas Seedor there, who's down in P5, and Faulkner just charging around. And for our top 5 right now, really our top 6, it's a very quiet race for these guys. They seem to all be in their own microcosms of pace right now and just simply running their race, as we do see here Prendergast just getting past what was Ulrich there. Ulrich a lap down, of course. Here's our P3 man, the BP Racing driver of Prendergast, as he comes over the brow of the hill and down into turn number 6. Got to go some way down the order to find where we've got drivers very close together right now, I dare say. And we can see here it is Lux. He got past Brown a little bit early on after that mistake Brown made into the final corner about 3 laps ago, and Lux starting to pull away. That last lap from Lux was a 35.0, from Brown at 35.2, gaining 2 tenths there, and that's, excuse me, that seems to be the delta between the 2 drivers. And hold up a second, I think we just lost Lux. Well, we have had some connectivity issues with the server, I believe. I think we did just lose Walter Lux. I'm going to see if... Well, we have lost Lux. We've definitely lost Walter Lux. That is a disaster. He's just disappeared from the server. I think that's a disconnection, a technical issue there. So that is very unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. Lux was in a very good place, and that gives Brown the position as a result there. And that is a disaster for Lux, who was going very well and just outside of the top 10 right now as our drivers make their way through. And can't shake the cliche there in the Twitch chat. Looks like tough conditions indeed. A lot of our drivers have been caught out by these conditions right now, as the rain is continuing to fall here at Zolder, and I believe its intensity is changing within the next 10 to 30 minutes. But which way it goes, whether it's going to get less or more intense, we'll wait for the clouds to tell us. As we can see here, Brown making his way through at turn 9. Velkoski there with a 5-second penalty. Now, why has he got a penalty, you may be asking at this point? Well, he's managed to get past McKenna, and he's also got past Ward. Loisinger's coming through here, and it's the case, I think there has been something that's happened quite recently, and the 5 seconds is a push to pass versus not Chris McKenna, my apologies, that's a push to pass versus car 46, and car 46 much earlier on in the race this would have been. We're just trying to find car 46 on our timing screen right now. It's Robert Kelkowski who's got the, wait, it was versus car number 7. My apologies there, misreading the stewards briefing. That was Alex Ward, but we have, well, we've got Ward all the way down in P26 right now. But remember, Ward had that pit stop and also that time penalty to serve in the pit. As Velkoski here, he's got Loisinger coming through, and I don't think it's the case that he's wanted to let Loisinger through, given that Loisinger's had a pit stop, and now as they make the way across that time line once again, Loisinger up into P17 here, rather forcefully past Velkoski. He's got the move done as they now make the way through 1 and in towards turns 2, 3, 4 and 5. You can see Velkoski, the damage on the car there. That Porsche not looking in a very happy state of composure right now as they come through to the back to motion driver here, really struggling through the corners. And I think whatever damage he's got on that car, it's really wounding him in these medium speed apexes as he comes through 3 and heads up into 4. As they make their way through the corner here, we can see we've got Andres Mercer now trying to come through as McKenna moves off the racing line to, well, moves offline and tries to let Mesa through as rapidly as possible there, not wanting to disrupt the leaders as they come through the traffic, of course. With 43 minutes to go here, we're not quite at half distance as we see Mesa, they're getting a rather nasty moment there coming out to turn 5 and just a little bit sideways, and the Aston Martin driver right now, I do not think he's got an answer to Harry Phillips' pace, although saying that, he has brought the gap down a little bit on the last lap. He brought it down by 2 tenths, but when Phillips has got a lead of roughly 12 seconds, as we see Velkoski there with a drive-through penalty as he moves out of the way immediately for Mesa here. Now that drive-through penalty, we will find out what that is for very shortly. More of our words from our stewards are coming in right now off screen, and we will tell you what that is for very shortly. But I think that's for another instant. But we can definitely see Velkoski not having a happy day at the races here, and as a result, it is going from good to bad to disastrous. But for our P2 man right now, it's going pretty well. But I think he would love to know how Phillips is able to hold such a pace. Phillips just set a 33.6, not the fastest lap of the race. The fastest lap being that 33.2 that he's also set. But meanwhile, Mesa responded with 34.3. He did have traffic, to be fair, but that seems to be the difference. Phillips just seems to have a couple attempts every lap, if not more, in the bag. And we can look a bit further down. We see Fabio Chiena here with a 15-second time penalty. A lot of penalties are now starting to come out. I think the stewards having to go back through a lot of racing footage earlier on. But Chiena, that 15-second penalty, that is 15 seconds to car 48. So that's Chiena in driving into the rear of car 11 and forcing them wide. Well, the car number 11, as we see Chiena, they're getting it very wrong in the run out of what was 8 there over the crest of the hill down towards 9. The car we're referring to here, who he had the contact with, was Rainer Effenstedt, the Austrian driver here, making his way down towards 9. I think he might be happy to hear that the stewards have sided with him with the contact that we didn't see, but there was contact between the two of them. But Effenstedt now being able to get that place back, as the time penalty will need to be served by Chiena at some point in this race. At the end of the race, if he doesn't serve it in the pits, but I believe he will be required to serve it in the pits as they both continue around here. But meanwhile, we look a little bit further back, and one driver we haven't spoke about really in this race so far, Paul Scott, the Optimum Motorsport driver, as he makes his way through turn 7 up into 8. In P21 right now, he's got Ulrich chasing after him. Ulrich has already cleared his pit stop, however, and that's why Ulrich finds himself behind. Hold on a second, we've got a battle kicking off here, and by the looks of things, that is Lucas Seedor making his way. Well, my apologies, I think that was Lucas Seedor. That was Lucas Seedor, but it's the case that he was making his way through, and then was that? Well, it was actually Prendergast. My apologies there, getting a little bit mistaken. I thought it was the fact that we were perhaps seeing Piringer and Seedor going toe-to-toe. No, that was Prendergast coming past the other Jochen Schweizer machine of what was Maliar there. Maliar being a lap down. So apologies for that, folks. A little bit confusing. What Prendergast and it was the Seedor having the definitive red liveries until you look closer at both drives. But I hope you'll forgive me as we see Prendergast is still in that P3 position, and it is the case that Piringer in P6 still. He is not closing on Seedor at this point, but one driver who is closing up right now to Piringer is Marcus Fox, and you can see the Porsche driver here. He is gradually bringing that gap down. He's just brought it down by a second on that lap alone, and Fox really going on the offensive here. I think he's trying to find a way into this as he makes his way through turn number 2 here, and we ride on board with a Porsche driver, and look at the speed he is carrying through turn 3 right now, as it does look as though there's Piringer in the distance. The gap between these two is constantly coming down, and Fox really tapping into the pace in that Porsche 911 as he makes his way out of 4 and heads down towards 5. And as they come charging down here, you can see Piringa having to stay on the wet part of the circuit here. I think Piringa's struggling with his tyre temperatures, because to stay over there is an indicator he needs the water in order to be able to get those temperatures down. And as they make their way through the hill and over towards 6 and 7, we can see coming down into Villeneuve right now that these two are getting closer, and it's Fox who is on a charge here, and he is trying to get himself into that top 5 as close to it as possible. The first thing he's got to do, get from P7 to P6, and it's Piringa who's in his way, as we see Piringa having a very poor run there through the Villeneuve chicane as they come out of 8 and head down towards 9 now. It's a situation whereby Fox will be starting to eye where Piringa may make a mistake, where he's vulnerable, where he breaks earlier. Where can Fox find that opportune moment? So remember, that BMW has got brilliant straight line speed, and that's what Fox has got to do. He's got to find a way to get past and eliminate that straight line speed advantage. So he won't want to necessarily do it in the run out of 9 down towards 11, or from 11 into 1. He may want to do it a little bit earlier on in the lap as they make their way out of the final chicane and head around for another lap of the circuit. As they go on to lap number 24 now with 38 minutes to go still, we can see the difference between the two of them. That was another second gained by Fox on that lap alone. He's definitely in striking distance. We see Piringa goes very deep there. He loses the traction out the corner, and this is going to make him vulnerable now through the triple right-hand sequence. As we can see, we go to the exterior cameras here, how Fox is trying to get the cut back through 2, and he's going to be looking for it here as they make their way through 3 and 4. He's going to be as close as he can be as he comes through 3, then 4. He's got to nail turn number 4 here, and he may be within an opportunity down to the Kleiner chicane as they come through the right-hander of 4. You can see Fox all over the back of Piringa here. Piringa, of course, staying defensive, but then starting to make his way back onto the racing line here, because it's going to be a very tight apex, of course, into the chicane. And as Fox makes his way down, not able to come through here, but the Porsche driver looking very strong as they come through the chicane and over the crest of the hill now and down into 6. As they come down, this is where the BMW driver starts to open up a little bit more as we get to the halfway point of the race with 37.5 minutes to go out the 75 minutes we started with. We can see behind Lara starting to catch up as well. 5 seconds back is the McLaren driver in P8, but the number 266 car looms ever closer as they make their way around, and Fox losing out then the run out of Villeneuve, just not enough speed through 8, and as they come down to 9 right now, he's got to do it all again on the next lap. But these two are getting very close and very feisty indeed, as we are hearing more penalties coming in very shortly between drivers, as we see a 5-second penalty for Velkoski. We'll try to figure out what else happened. We've got a penalty for Gareth Mills as well. I believe it's a drive-through penalty for Gareth Mills, which was recorded, but we see Fox there going very deep into the chicane. He's gone too deep on the brakes, and I think Piringa is now going to have a bit of breathing room. I think Fox had 1 or 2 opportunities, and as a result now he's got to wait for another chance. He'll need to catch up a bit later on in the lap as they make their way down into turn number 1. But meanwhile, as they make their way through, we look further down the order right now. We see Sylvain Pastoris, meanwhile, in P9. He's got Andre Jacquelin catching up to him right now. Is the Slovenian chasing down the Swiss as rapidly as possible here. These two still got their pit stop to clear with 36 minutes remaining. And we can see the rain continuing to fall here at the Zolder circuit in Belgium. Those clouds not wanting to go away. Our track temperature staying at that constant 19 degrees centigrade right now. And I think our drivers are just having to balance the tyres as much as they possibly can as they make their way through turn 2 and into turn 3, and you can see Jacqueline falling back a little bit as they come through the double right hand sequence before 4. It's the case that Pastoris just seems to have a little bit more momentum at this point in the race. But meanwhile, Piringa versus Fox. Oh, goodness me, and it looks as though Fox has gone very deep and had to take to the runoff there and had to skip across the gravel, as we see Monrose moving out of the way for both drivers there. And as a result, Fox just a mistake down into the chicane there. It didn't look as though there was any contact or anything sudden that caused Fox to make the mistake. I think that might have been a mistake of his own doing on the brakes, but Fox lucky to keep the car together there. That could have been a nightmare. And behind, we've got Lara there, who's coming through the rear of your picture right now as the camera pans round, and as they make their way out of turn number 9 and down towards 11, we can see Lara getting ever closer. Only 3.5 seconds now before the McLaren driver is in an attacking position. And meanwhile, as they make their way through, I think Fox now does have to think about potentially going for a pit stop, because if he's like this behind Piringa for much longer, I would expect that Lara is going to be attacking these two within the next 5 laps. And if so, that is not where Fox is going to want to be, because what Piringa can then do is effectively use the straight line speed of that BMW to back Fox into Lara, and when they start fighting one another, that will mean that then Piringa can naturally pull away. And I think that's what the German's going to be thinking about right now. How can he compress Fox backwards into Lara as they make their way around? Now, a bit further down, we take a look at Gareth Mills here, and we can see Gareth Mills has not cleared his pit stop as of yet, as he makes his way through. The South African here, he's a long way down on Perfusen now, as they make their way around to go onto another lap. And I think if that drive-through was for Mills, then he has served it. It was a drive-through for Mills, and he had, well no, it was a drive-through for car It was car number 4, not car number 77, so that was Mr. Boy there. So Jesse Monroe's had the contact from Mills, and it was the drive-through for Mills as a result. So that clarifies that up. But meanwhile, we can see Kiena there all over the back of Brown here as they come through turn number 3 and head up into 4. It is the case that Brown feeling a lot of pressure from the Swiss driver, who does have that 15-second time penalty he will have to serve in the pits. So for Kiena right now, this is a nightmare situation, because every second that Brown costs him, he'll force him backwards in the race. And we can see here Kiena's going to go for it. He's going for it into the chicane, and Brown does not need to fight this one too hard. And you can see Brown backs out of it and just tucks him behind, because he knows he will get that back, or he will believe he'll get that back through that pit window, because both of them have yet to pit with 33.5 minutes remaining. So as they now come down in towards Villeneuve, expect Brown to just fall back to about 1 to 2 seconds, perhaps even up to 5 from the back of Kiena. But he won't let Kiena saunter off into the distance, but he will give Kiena the ability to push hard and not worry about Brown, because there's no need for Brown to push too hard if Kiena's got that time to serve in the pits, unless of course they're on very different pit stops, i.e. one of them may be changing tyres, one may not, then it may not work out. As we see Kiena there goes very deep into 9. He does love that deep line compared to other drivers. Kiena being able to make it work in that vantage, and as they come down towards turn 11 right now, you can see the gap he is opening up. Meanwhile, in the hunt for P6 still, we see Fox here. Lara's getting ever closer. The gap now only 2.5 seconds as they come out of turn number 4. But this time Fox has had a very good run out of 4 and down towards 5. But he just has not got that final stage of acceleration to bring down the beast of the BMW, as the Porsche with its poise makes its way out of 5 and heads over the brow of the hill into 6 here. And what else can Fox do to try and get Piringer to lose that pace he has got? Well, a case that Fox has got to try and feint a move. If he can't get a move, as we can see here, they're now coming up behind Maliar, who's a lap down here. And remember, Piringer will be hoping he'll be on comms to his teammate, most likely, saying to him, can you move out of the way? I am coming along. And whilst I wouldn't expect that Maliar's going to take too much time letting Fox through, as we can see that Piringer immediately flashing his lights here. He may be trying to come through Piringer at a point where only one car can be let through. And if that would work out naturally, then Fox might be held up a little bit. That is something that can happen around a tight and twisty circuit such as this. So it will be the case that Fox will be hoping to pressure Piringer into a situation where both of them have got to come past Maliar together, so Fox can use Piringer as his spacer, if you will, as they make their way through the chicane. But meanwhile, coming into the pits, out of our top 5, it's Prendergast. He has come into the pits. He was in P3, and he's now dropping down that order. But it's the first pit stop from our drivers in that top 5, as we see Harry Phillips continues to soldier around right now and just seemingly keeping the distance. He's got a 14-second lead now from Andres Mesa. Mesa, to give you an idea, here at the Villeneuve chicane, and then in P3 we have Ethan Faulkner, who has taken the position, of course, with Prendergast pitting, and as he makes his way through at the chicane here, can the Irishman perhaps pull a wonder in terms of the strategy in order to take that podium for Prendergast, or will Prendergast hold on to it right now? The omens are looking good for Prendergast, but we will see for Faulkner what he's able to achieve here, as the field has spaced out a little bit right now. Still 31 minutes to go, and I'm sure we're still going to get some surprises come at the end of it here, as we do see Lucas Seedor here, where he's just got past a load of traffic. That's McKenna, and behind him by looks of things, that is Ulrich all over the back of McKenna. These two were coming together earlier on. The distinct GG driver, Chris McKenna, has got Ulrich chasing after him like a thunderclap right now as they make their way down towards turn number 9 as they come into the heavy braking zone here. No change between the two of them as they come through the right-hander, as we also say hello in the YouTube chat to Sebastian Mullerbacher. As they make their way down, they see no change right now, although I say that Ulrich's going to go for the move here, or is it? No, he's making the feint, and I think McKenna's into the pits. McKenna is into the pits. That will release Ulrich, and now it'll be about Ulrich. How does he respond to McKenna's pit stop? How much pace has the M Technology driver got versus McKenna as they make their way around onto their respective laps? But meanwhile, coming out of the pits is Daniel Korogoski. As we see, he gets a little bit of a slide there coming out the pit lane. A lot of standing water on that pit lane, and Korogoski being able to come out into some clear space here down in P17. Now, he will need to nail this lap immediately because he is in that hunt for just outside the top 10. He was in roughly the battle for P13-14 before he pitted, so he's got to get the charge on right now. He's got Ticini up the road 4 seconds ahead of him. Marco Ticini here, to give you an idea, the Ticini Volanti team driver here, as he makes his way through at the turn 5 chicane. But it is the case right now, Korogoski will try to fly and go as fast as possible to gain from the pit stop and the clear air he has afforded himself. But meanwhile, down in P22, we've got Robert Velkoski here. He has got Sylvain Pastores starting to come up behind him and try and make his way through. As Velkoski, they're going a little bit wide out of 3. The car not in the best of states right now as they make it through. And we can see there it's the case that Pastores will be coming through very shortly. I think the blue flags will be coming through. And we can see Velkoski getting ready to lift. Well, no, he's not lifting at the moment. It's most likely going to be coming out of the chicane as he goes very deep there and has to take to the runoff area. And that has let Pastores through there. And Jacqueline is charging after. And that is Andrew Jacqueline here, the Solenian driver coming over the crest of the hill here. He is hunting down Pastores. The gap between the two of them only 2 seconds. And on that last lap, Jacqueline was 3 attempts slower than Pastores here, but it could all turn as we see that's Prendergast in the rear of your picture here as Jacqueline goes a little bit wide out of 8, or sorry, out of 7 and now into 8. But Prendergast is hunting these guys down and he is trying to run as quickly as possible here because he was the first of our race leaders to pit and he will be trying to get the best possible laps in to close up the distance and potentially give himself that security of P3. And can he perhaps upset Mesa for P2? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, as we look further down the order once again here, McKenna, after his pit stop, has come out in P24. He's just going through your picture right now out of turn number 5. And as he goes over the brow of the hill, next up ahead of him is Gareth Mills. Gareth Mills, the best part of 22 seconds up the road. But as we look back up towards the leader of our race at the moment, Harry Phillips, he's still got a 13-second gap versus Mesa. But Mesa's now starting to close that gap up a little bit. It's come down over the last couple of laps by a second. And to give you an idea, the last lap was a 33.5 from Phillips. And this lap he's just done, a 33.4. Andres Mesa, his previous lap was a 33.3. And as the Spaniard makes his way out the final corner right now, let's see what he does here as he comes across that timing line. I think Mesa may have been waiting for an opportunity to unleash his pace. Another 33.3 here, so another 10th gain versus Phillips. I think Phillips might be controlling his pace right now and calming things down a little bit. As we see Max Malliard there with a stop and go 30-second penalty, and I would presume that's for something to do with the pit lane as they make their way through. But Mesa getting held up behind Affenstedt right now as they come through turn 3 here, and Affenstedt needs to be aware of the fact that we do have one of our leaders come through, and you can see he's backed off there. He took a nice wide line through 3 to let Mesa through. He started to flash his lights there, wondering about the pace, but he is trying to push his Mesa right now, and I think Phillips might be just wary of that and perhaps managing the gap as much as he possibly can. But meanwhile, in that P3, we've still got Faulkner there out on circuit, and we've got Lucas Seedor down in P4. Seedor, the best part of 14.5 seconds down, our P3 man right now. But of course, these guys have yet to pit, and they will be very wary of the fact they've got Prendergast, who's in P10 right now, who's trying to catch up with them. As we see, and meanwhile there, making their way through in the rear of the picture from Seedor, we have got Korogowski here in P17. Having he recently pitted, and he is being chased, of course, by Ulrich, who's also recently pitted. These two charging up the field and trying to get towards the end of the top 20 in terms of trying to go into that top 10, trying to go for P11 and P12, and these two will be pushing it very hard. And it does look as though at the moment Ulrich, the faster of the two drivers, he took 2.5 seconds out of Korogowski on that previous lap. Korogowski making a mistake, and as they make their way down into the Villeneuve chicane here, how long will it be before the Mercedes driver looks for a potential move, as we are waiting for our race leaders to make their potential pit stop? As we take a look down with our stewards right now, we're just going to see if we've had any word from our stewards with regards to any other incidents out on circuit right now, and it does not appear to be the case. So we are just racing as we are, and it is one of those situations where Korogowski has got to find a way to hold off the fast charging Ulrich right now. And Ulrich, to give you an idea, as we ride on board here with the AMG driver chasing after that McLaren 720 as they come into that heavy braking zone once again for turn 11. As they make their way out the corner here, it is the case Korogowski getting the better run out the corners. I think Ulrich, now that he's got close to Korogowski, has ended up in a situation, well, what do I do from this point onwards? Because the two of them very similar on pace here, and you can see as they make their way through 1, how Korogowski just seems to hold the momentum through the corner there, and now coming up into 2, that McLaren looking very sharp through these medium speed apexes as the Mercedes has to battle for that rotation by comparison. That's the difference between front engine rear drive and mid-engine rear drive. The McLaren being mid-engine rear drive, the Mercedes front engine rear drive, is the fact that the Mercedes will lack the overall natural rotation through the corners, and he's got to fight with the car, whereas it's the case with Korogowski. He has more rotation than he perhaps desires, but as they come down here on the straight, down towards turn 5 once again, this is where they start to close up. And meanwhile, back there in what is the battle for P5, P6, we can see here Piringer has, of course, been jumped by Fox. We saw that earlier on, and it's the case now that Piringer is trying to chase after, and Lara is only 2.9 seconds back in Piringer here. So it is one of those situations right now I think for Fox, he is just trying to pull that gap on Piringer, and also at the same time Piringer trying to keep Lara at bay. These three are running around in that battle for what is P5 at the moment, but we know that Prendergast, who pitted, these guys have yet to pit, so Prendergast is expected to jump back ahead of them. So this is quote-unquote the battle for P6 overall in the strategic state as they make their way through turn number 9 once more. As they come down here, no real changes between the three drivers, but they are coming up behind some traffic right now, and this could upset the apple cart to an extent for one of the drivers. As we see, Fox does not go into the pits. Does Piringer go into the pits? No, he does not. What about Lara here? Surely one of them's got to think about doing something different from the others, and when are they going to do it? For the simple reason, as they come closer together, if they get caught up in that situation where they're too close to one another to really gain an advantage or pass, then one of them will need to react with a pit stop. Otherwise, it is going to cause problems to their overall race pace. As we see the Spaniard here in P7 making his way around in the 266 car. It's been a good performance so far from Paco, but as he makes his way down towards turn 2 right now, what can he do to gain 1 or 2 or more places? Has he got it in him? That's the big question. But meanwhile, Kieran Prendergast, since his pit stop, where he's come up behind Andre Jacqueline already, and now as he's trying to make a move for P9, the BP Racing driver here, in one of those situations where he's got to try and find the move, but Jacqueline is not going to make this one easy. And remember, Jacqueline has yet to take a pit stop here, so for Prendergast right now, it's all about finding a way through, and if Jacqueline does not want to let Prendergast through, then it's the case that he is choosing, he'll be compromising his own race to a degree, as they make their way through turn 3 and up into 4 right now. We've got yellow flags out for somewhere out on the circuit. They've just been cleared, in fact. But Prendergast right now in a very difficult situation. He's got to find a way past the civilian, but can he do it as they make their way down towards turn 5? That Aston Martin very strong on the straights, absolute raw, and the torque of that V8 versus the Ferrari's engine as they come down into the Kleiner chicane once again on lap number 33, and you can see how Prendergast has just so much more pace through the chicane, but he just does not have that straight line speed to capitalise. He flashes his lights here, and I think he might be trying to say to Jacqueline, look, just let me go, I'm not in the same race as you, you're compromising your race by holding me up here, as they make their way through 7 and head up in towards 8. But Prendergast right now in a really difficult situation. He's got an Aston Martin in front of him, and it doesn't want to just let him go. And as they make their way down towards 9 here, I think Prendergast is going to have to find somewhere we can get very close very rapidly and then go for a rather aggressive move here, because as we ride on board with the Aston Martin racing driver of Jacqueline, as he comes down towards turn 11 right now, looking very smooth, and the lap times are comparable between these two drivers over the last couple of laps, both in the 35.4s, as they make their way through the chicane, the final chicane once again, the Ickenbox chicane. As they come out of it, you can see, look at the fact that whilst Prendergast gets a really good run out there, as soon as that Aston Martin is able to unleash its engine, the Ferrari's just not got enough to find a way through. But as they make their way into turn 1 this time, he's going to look for on the inside, and there's contact, there's a little bit of contact, and as they make their way out the corner right now, Jacqueline looking for that cutback, just a tiny tap on the rear end, but I do think Prendergast now, as they make their way through turn 2, a little bit more of a door-to-door there, but Jacqueline finally having to yield the position there. Prendergast making his elbows as wide as possible, knowing he does not need to lose any more time, as we do see our drivers now make their way through turn number 4. It wasn't the cleanest, but Prendergast up into P9, Jacqueline down to P10. And now the next driver up the road for Prendergast, it's Sylvain Pastoris, the Ferrari driver from Rinaldi Racing, who makes his way over the crest of the hill down into turn 6. The gap, 6.5 seconds. But to give you an idea, Pastoris' pace, a 34.782. I expect that Prendergast now is in clear air, maybe getting into the low 34s, either 34.1s, 32s, 34.1s or 34.2s, or perhaps even into those high 33s, those 33.9s. But meanwhile, I can tell you that in the battle for the race lead, Harry Phillips still leading by 12.5 seconds. That last lap of 34.2 versus Andres Mesa's lap of a 33.8. Mesa continuing to close that gap down versus our race leader, but it's not coming down too rapidly here. I do think Phillips right now is just balancing this race out and taking it nice and easy, knowing he doesn't need to do anything magical now to potentially get that win. He just needs to bring that car home, bring it in for its mandated pit stop, but just get everything right here. As meanwhile, Ethan Faulkner still in that P3 position, and it really has opened up with regards to our drivers and having to deal with their relative pit stops right now and their overall strategies. It'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. All of our leaders really, apart from Prendergast, all banking on going as late as possible into the pits, and I think most likely just for a little bit of fuel and not for a tyre change once again, as we do see the track temperature has dropped to 18 degrees centigrade. So as a result, that may mean that those pressures may not be as comfortable now, as they've got to do a little bit more work to get those pressures up, but we will wait and see. As we do have here Marcus Fox, he's got Ward behind him, but remember, Ward down in P25 is a lap down, and Piringer and Lara are behind. They're both respectively 2 2 and 5 seconds back. They're not closing up on Fox right now, and Fox in a very comfortable position. I think just simply pacing this race very nicely now. And well, to give you an idea, he's currently in that P5 position. Now, where's Prendergast by comparison? As we see lights flashing there from Piringer to say to Ward, if you can let me through, please, I'll be grateful. And Ward responding immediately. But I reckon Prendergast, if he's not able to get a rapid move on here, could end up coming out around these guys, given the time he lost to Jacqueline. We will wait and see what happens there, because remember, they will be on their own respective strategies. But this is definitely not over yet, and I do suspect we are going to see an upset in the top 5 at the end of this race. We've got 19 minutes to go here, whilst it has been a little bit quiet in the mid-period of this race right now as everybody's going to their strategies, and it has spaced out a little bit. We are expecting to see drivers come back together towards the end, and when they do, we'll be bringing it all with regards to what could potentially happen. But right now, everyone focused on their strategies and just simply nursing their cars around the circuit as best as possible. As we can see here, Korogoski coming out to turn 3 into 4 in that P16 position. He's hunting down Brown, and Brown, who is 10.5 seconds up the road. But meanwhile, one driver who we haven't seen in a little while, Martin Provisen, the Dutch driver here, making his way across that timeline in P18, a long way down on Paul Scott. Paul Scott, a good amount of time up the road from him, but Provisen just simply trying to keep this one nice and clean. As we do see there, LCADC in the YouTube chat saying, let's go Christian Klein. And Christian Klein, I believe, is... well, he's not quite on the circuit today, I do not think, unless I'm very much mistaken. That's not a name which I've got on my list here, but I believe it's the case. Hold on a second, we've got Gareth Mills here coming into the pits from what was at P20 at the time, as he makes his way down towards out towards the pit lane. And as the South African driver here from GM Racing comes in, this is going to drop him quite a way down the order, and let's see what he's able to do as he comes into the pits. But meanwhile, I think Andres Mason just making his way through turn 5 right now. And as he does, we can see that gap between himself and Phillips. It's opened back up again. Phillips is responding. That last lap from Phillips, a 33.4. Mesa, a 33.6. It's that situation where I do think the two of them are just simply trying to match one another pace. Well, Mesa obviously wants to go faster than Phillips, but every time he goes faster, Phillips just says, okay, I'll just up the pace by a percentage, and then let's see how far you can go. And that is the problem as they make their way around the circuit right now for Mesa. He's got to essentially try and outpace Phillips in these conditions. As we see, Harry Phillips is into the pits on the race lead as he makes his way through. He's going to be very careful with that pit limiter, of course. He will not want to fall foul of the pit stop. And what about Andres Mesa? Does he come into the pits as well? No, he goes on for another lap. So we are going to see a change of race leader. Phillips is not going to lead every single lap, we believe. But right now it's the case that what can Mesa do in order to try and get ahead of Phillips, who's making his way into his pit box right now? Can the Spaniard do something magical in the strategy? Would it be the case that Phillips has got this one in the bag? I would suspect that these two are identical strategies, which they were effectively at Donington. It will be the case that Phillips should come back out once they've both pitted well ahead, roughly at least 10 seconds ahead, but we will wait. As we see, meanwhile, Ethan Faulkner continues around in that P3 position right now, so he will make his way down towards turn 1 as well, as Phillips is coming out of the pits. So he's had a short stop this time, Phillips. He hasn't had any problems getting the tyres changed over, because I don't think he's probably gone for that tyre change. He's probably just gone for a splash and dash of fuel. But the Cohesion Sim Sport driver emerges from the pit lane in P3, and now it's all about Faulkner and Mesa. Mesa 28 seconds up the road, and Phillips just simply needs to manage this one. He doesn't need to do anything magical to bring home this win. It's a case that he just needs to match the pace that he had earlier and wait for Mesa's pit stop. As we see, Faulkner's just ahead right now. Faulkner only 3.5 seconds up the road from Phillips, and they will be coming together very soon, we would reckon, based on the relative deltas of the two drivers. As also into the pits, we've got Sylvain Pastores and Paco Lara coming into the pits here. So the pit stops are all kicking off right now. And where's Prendergast in all this? Well, Prendergast is already coming across that timeline, so Prendergast will be getting back up into what is that P7 position for the time being, and with Piringer up the road, only 28 seconds up the road, I think Prendergast will have done enough to get back ahead of Piringer here, and even ahead of Marcus Fox. Fox is only the best part of 2-3 seconds up the road, so I think Prendergast is on his way to recover his P3, but remember, he's got a long way to go to get that. He's got Lucas Cedar also, who is yet to pit, and he's got Ethan Faulkner and then just Mesa, who've yet to pit, but Mesa in P2 would expect would come back out in that P2 position when all is said and done, but we will wait wait and see as Zolder makes his way right now down towards turn 11. Does he come into the pits this time? Do we start to see the reaction with 15 minutes to go here? An hour complete. No, he does not pit. He stays out once again and makes his way around as we see Sylvain Pastor still in the pit lane right now, and Andrew Jacqueline coming out of the pits in P12 here, but he's come out into a good amount of space. But you can see Harry Phillips coming right up behind him here, and I can imagine our P3 man will be flashing his lights furiously here to say to the Food Point Racing team, well, it's all well and good you've had a pit stop. If you could politely move out of the way right now, I'd be grateful. But we will wait and see as they both make their way through turn number 4 here, and surely Jacqueline's going to move out of the way. He does immediately. He lifts here, so Phillips not being held up at all as they make their way down towards the chicane, out of turn 4 and down towards 5 here. It's Aston Martin versus that Bentley, and the Bentley comes on through and continues to pursue Faulkner here. And I think for what is Phillips as well, he might be grateful that's giving him a little bit more space to Faulkner, because if Faulkner's going to go even longer here, then Phillips having to try and get past Faulkner. Will Faulkner fight for it, even though he's not really fighting for the lead, or will he just simply let Phillips through? That would be a question that we'll have to wait to answer, as we see Pacalara on his outlap right now in P9, and he's got Kiena, who's yet to pit up the road from him. So we've still got that question of some pit stops outstanding, as we do see here Profusen, and it's Andres Mesa who's coming across that timeline to lap Profusen, and Profusen staying off towards the outside there, as we can see Lara's also going to come through very shortly. Meanwhile, we see in P10, we've got Rainer Effenstedt here, the Austrian driver in P10. He's still got to pits, however, so he will drop down the order. It's Leusinger only 2.8 seconds behind him right now, and Leusinger, having taken his pit stop, will get back into the top 10, we would assume, very shortly. 13.5 minutes to go here as we take a look in the chat, and we can see Prenter Senior here saying hello and come on son. I would assume that might be the father of Kieran Prendergast, unless I'm very much mistaken, who's cheering on his son right now, who's making his way. He's in P7 as it currently stands, as behind there, we just saw very briefly, it's the case, Jesse Monrose versus Gareth Mills, so these two are coming together for position right now in the battle for P21. Prendergast at the head, and he'll be grateful to have cleared the pair of them, as we see Monrose under a lot of pressure here from the McLaren driver of Mills, as we ride on board with Mills on the dashboard here, and Mills having had a nightmare race, much like Monrose. Both of them will want to salvage something out of the race tonight. Which one of them can get some good points out of it, coming home in P21 as they make their way into the Xbox chicane, and then coming out of the corner here and onto what will be their 37th lap as they come along and charge down towards turn 1 once again. As they build up that speed into the left-hander here, you can see that it's the case that Monroe's going a bit deep, but Mills having to be hesitant there. Both of them driving on the absolute limit with regards to their cars here, as we do see a Monroe just drifted through the corner. That BMW drifting through the corners as if it is mid-engine rear drive. I think Monroe's there running a very, very unique tune on that BMW, and it's working out to his advantage, as we see Mills is falling back right now. Kiena still does have that 15-second penalty to burn in the pits as well. So Kiena in P8 on that time screen. Here is Fabio Kiena, to give you an idea, the Swiss driver. He's going to drop a good way down the order when he does pit here, and this could really open things up for the midfield to creep into the top 10. And now with 12 minutes to go here, we are still waiting as Faulkner's into the pits. Ethan Faulkner has come into the pits. Now this will be huge, because Prendergast, of course, had the traffic when he came out of the pits. He's had to find his way through. Where is Prendergast in all this? Well, he's coming through turns 7 and 8 right now. He will be looking to come back into P3. Can Faulkner emerge ahead as they make their way down towards turn number 9? Does Prendergast, and we can see behind there Monrose and Mills still kicking off in the battle for P21 as Prendergast gets a little bit deep there into turn 9, but it's not going to cost him too much time here. Faulkner's in his pit box. Well, he's making his way along to his pit box right now, we believe. In fact, he's making his way out of the pits here. I think Prendergast is going to lose the position versus Faulkner, and if so, then Prendergast is going to chase Faulkner down at the end here, because it was Prendergast in P3, but it's the case as he crosses the timing line here. We look back to where Faulkner is, and we can see Faulkner's dropped down to P6, and Prendergast is now the best part of what is 11 seconds back on Faulkner here. So Prendergast has got to charge after Faulkner here to get back that P3 come the end. My goodness, so Prendergast lost out considerably with the fact that he pitted early and had to find his way through the field right now. We'll see how Prendergast and Faulkner react to one another shortly, but this is not the way he would have wanted it right now, and it's great to hear that we've got Kieran's dad tuning in the YouTube chat right now. And Prentice Senior, they do say hello to him if you are in the YouTube chat with him, and he'll be watching his son right now, and his son's going to be absolutely pounding the car around the circuit, thinking, right, I've got 10 minutes to try and close down a gap of 10.8 seconds. Can he do it? He would need to take roughly 1.5 seconds a lap out of Faulkner. I think if he does it, it will be magical, but I'm not sure it's going to happen here. But if he can keep it together right now, it's definitely a top 5 finish for him, because we do still have the likes of Piringer here, Ralph Piringer to pit, and also Marcus Fox, and those guys going as long as they possibly can right now to try and go to the very, very last minutes before they pit. And Lucas Seedor as well has yet to pit, and he's our top driver who has yet to pit, is Seedor, the Polish driver here, who's just soldiering on. And this late pit stop approach that a lot of our drivers are using, it seems to be working out for our leaders massively as he makes his way down into turn number 4 once again. But he does have to serve that pit stop at some point. When's he going to do it? That is the big question. As meanwhile we see here, Gareth Mills back in P22, still chasing after Monrose, but Monrose has now got that gap open to 1.5 seconds here. And as they make their way out of the final corner and head across that timeline, it is the case that I think Mills is having to give up this fight for now. We've still got 9 minutes of racing to go. They may come back together towards the end, but we will wait and see as we look back to P16. Here's Anthony Brown, or Ant Brown in short, the Code Brown driver here. He is 9.5 seconds off of Korogowski. I think Brown at this point will just be focusing on bringing that car home. It's been a very dramatic race for a lot of drivers here. And right now they are going to be very heavily focused on just getting it home and getting some points on the board. The points they've got is going to be critical for most, but we will wait to see whether anyone can make a late charge as we look further down the order. We've got Alex Ward here down in P25. You can see him in the Bentley right now. The Bentley Team M Sport driver here, just focusing on bringing the car home. He hasn't got too much time left in this race. He is the last of our runners out on circuit. We have had the best part of 4 retirements from tonight. We do have Emil Blaine in the pit still, but Blaine, unfortunately, with those technical issues, is having to sit things out. So it's Ward, the last of our runners right now. This race has been a very attritional race. It has worn down a lot of cars as we see Kienna into the pits. He served his penalty though, so he's going to come out, and Kienna's going to drop well down the order here. How far down the order is he going to drop, however? That is the big question here as he makes his way out into turn 2 very shortly. Comes out the pit lane, and is that, I believe that's Piringer going around the outside here to lap him, and that's Sylvain Pastoris only 3.5 seconds back and still closing. So the Ferrari driver will now have a character chase, and it will be Kienna who is up the road. He's only 3 seconds. It's coming down even still as Kienna tries to get his tyres back up to temperature here and charges down towards what is turn number 5. As we see a bit up ahead right now, that is Marcus Fox in P4 right now, yet to pit. He's got McKenna behind him who's a lap down. He's got Ablasser ahead of him who's a lap down. He's going to lap him very shortly. The blue flags are waving, but these guys going so long, 7.5 minutes to go. And when are we going to see Andres Mesa come into the pits right now? As we can see here, Fox really being held up by the traffic here, and this is not helping him at all. And there's nowhere really for Ablasser to go for the time being. He'll be getting frustrated right now, Will Fox, as they make their way down into 9. And surely Ablasser's going to lift out here down into the heavy braking zone. He is, and as they come through, we can see there it's McKenna trying to unlap himself versus Ablasser. They're not racing for position, I should point out, ladies and gentlemen. They are on 2 laps down respectively as they make their way down. And we can see here McKenna has got himself back ahead, but for how long before he has to give it up once again? As we do see behind Kienna and Ticini in a similar situation here, as we see Piringer into the pit. So from P5, Ralph Piringer comes, and he's going to release what will be the drivers behind him, such as Faulkner and Prendergast, into their respective positions. Fox continues around for another lap, however, as well as Lucas Seedor and also Andres Mesa. Now here is Mesa. What is the gap between himself and Phillips? That gap right now is 30. Well, we're waiting for our time screen to update here, folks. It's definitely not 40 seconds. I can tell you that much. If it was that much, then Mesa has literally pulled the pace out of nowhere. But the last lap, respectively, from both drivers, well, from Andres Mesa a 33.117, meanwhile Phillips a 33.321. So the two drivers exchanging lap times as if it's going out of fashion, and we can see that Phillips holding that gap in the region of under 28 seconds right now, and I think it's 28 seconds is more than enough to get Phillips back ahead. I think the pit stop time is approximately somewhere in the region of about 30 to 36 seconds roughly, but we will wait and see as Phillips continues to push around here what is going to happen as our time screens continue to get updated. But we can see right now Phillips just soldiering on here in that P2 position and hoping to see Mesa pit sometime soon. He must be thinking right now, when is the guy going to pit, as he makes his way across that timeline to go on to what will be his 45th lap. 5.5 minutes to go, and we still have some pit stops unaccounted for as they make their way around once again. Meanwhile, as we see, it's the case that Piringer, after his pit stop, has come out in P7. He's still ahead of Lara with everything said and done right now. Prendergast has, of course, cleared him 12 seconds up the road. As we see, Marcus Fox is into the pits from P4 here, and this will be critical for him. Does he come back out ahead of Piringer and Lara, or does he fall back as Ablas is also into the pit from what was P11? You can see him just coming through in the rear of your camera shot. A lap down on Fox right now, as we see all of our marshals standing clear as the drivers come through, and as they come down towards what is their pit boxes, we wait and see as Lucas Seedorf continues. He's yet to pit, and Andres Mesa as well. So we've got two drivers in our leader group at the moment who have yet to clear their mandatory stop. They're running out of time to do it, but they're waiting to the last possible moment. They're literally trying to hold on to a track position and hope that they do not get caught in any traffic. They want every benefit, and I think Seedorf here is going to try and use the toe of Malia up the hill into turns 6 and 7 here to try and gain a little bit. As we can see, Malia lifting off there, and Seedorf will be very grateful for that. He will be benefiting as much as he possibly can. Fox right now making his way out the pits. Where is even Faulkner right now? Well, Faulkner's already come through. We look for Piringer then, and Piringer's coming through turn 1 right now. I think Fox has jumped himself back ahead. I think Fox has held this. We'll wait and see as he makes his way through the corners here. And there's Fox and there's Piringer. They're literally nose to tail. So Piringer has gained through pitting a little bit earlier, but Fox has just held the position for the time being. And this is really uncomfortable for Fox right now because he's got traffic ahead of him. Piringer's going to go for the move. He's going for the move already into turn 4. Piringer is not waiting for Fox to get his tyres up to temperature. He's striking whilst the iron is hot, and Piringer is up into P6. Now this is critical for Piringer because they made their way down into the chicane. It's the case that Fox is trying to come back, and as they come through the corner, Piringer holds on for the time being. Fox has lost outside as we see Mills and Lara making their way across the curve, and we can see that Fox right now making his way down that hill and chasing after Piringer here. He's lost out right now, and he will want to come back. There's 3.5 minutes to go. 3 more laps for these guys. Which one of them is going to finish in P6? That is the big question. As we see Prendergast, with everything said and done, is in P5 right now, and Lucas Seedorf is into the pits. Now, where's Faulkner? Faulkner's coming across that timing line right now. Where's Prendergast? Well, he's coming through at the turn 11 chicane. So where is Seedorf going to come out? As we can see, Seedorf's making his way out the pits here. I think Prendergast is going to come back out ahead. We'll wait and see as he comes across that timing line. So as the camera pans round here, we will see. I think that's Seedorf just coming out the pits right now. I think Prendergast has been jumped by 2 drivers here. It's going to be very close as he comes out of turn 1 and heads down towards turn 2 right now. There's Lucas Seedorf and there's Prendergast behind. Prendergast has lost 2 positions because of pitting so early in the race by comparison with Faulkner and Seedorf, and that has worked out to be a disaster. And to be fair to Prendergast, he's been putting in very strong laps, but Faulkner has been responding. Prendergast has been on 33.9s, Faulkner on 33.7s to 33.9s, and Seedorf now has got to try and hold off his fellow Ferrari driver, who's going to be all over the back of him for the final 2.5 minutes, as Andres Mesa, I believe, has yet to clear his pit stop as well. We'll just check. He's not cleared it. He's only got this lap to do it. But as we come back right now to Prendergast versus Seedorf here, we ride on board with Prendergast as he makes his way for the Villeneuve chicane. This is the penultimate time we believe they're going to come through here, and as they make their way through turn 8 right now, they've got a car up ahead of them. That is Ant Brown up ahead, who's a lap down, who will need to move out the way. But can Prendergast try and magic his way into P4 right now versus Seedorf? Can he use the back marker as a means of getting closer to Seedorf? Well, he's doing it right now because Seedorf's just really had a bad run out of 9, and he's going to get ever closer here. He's going to look for the potential move down into 11. He's got to go to the outside right now. They're side by side into the heavy braking zone, and as they come down into X here, he's going to try and go around the outside. He's still there, but he's been pushed a little bit wide there, and as a result, as they come out the corner, he's going to have to wait for another opportunity as they come down towards what is their, well, if it's not their final lap, it will be their penultimate lap. I can assure you of that as they now come through turn 1 once again. But Prendergast will look for every which way through as Andres Mesa is into the pits as well. We'll keep our eye on that versus Phillips as we can see Prendergast looking for a move on the inside. Seedorf covers it off, and as they come through the right hand here, this is the battle for P4 with only 1.5 minutes remaining, less than a minute. As they come through, we can see we're going on to, well, the leaders have gone to their final lap. Prendergast flashing his lights left, right and centre here, trying to get into Seedorf's head, trying to distract him as much as possible. And as they now come down towards turn number 5 here, you can see both the Ferrari drivers absolutely stamping on the throttle pedal, and as they make their way down towards the chicane, down the Kleiner chicane, no change at the moment. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead, I can tell you Andres Mesa is leaving his pit stop right now now, and we can see Harry Phillips has come through, and I believe that is to retake the lead. So he is in the lead right now on his final lap. But meanwhile, Lucas Seedorf versus Prendergast, he's still holding on for the time being, and as they make their way through the right-hander of turn 8 right now, Seedorf under huge pressure. They're going to have one more lap after this, but right now it is our race leader of Harry Phillips who is on his final lap. So these guys will get one more lap. As we can see, they've got the traffic of Ant Brown there, who moves out the way immediately. He will not want to be in the way of either of them. They will both come charging down to his garage afterwards otherwise and have strong words. And as they make their way down towards 11 here, you can see Seedorf versus Prendergast. Seedorf goes defensive once again. Prendergast tries to find a way around the outside, but he's been there before. He doesn't need to try it twice. He looks at the cutback instead, but Seedorf parks it on the apex there and says to Prendergast, I'm aware of that one. You're going to have to find another way through. And as they make their way across that timing line, they go onto one final lap, and they're side by side down into turn 1 here, and it's going to be Prendergast to the inside, but he's going to look for it. He can't find it. But meanwhile, it's Harry Phillips who makes his way through what is turn number 9, and as he comes down through turn number 9 and in towards 10 and then to 11, he's led this one practically from start to finish. He's not made a single mistake. The strategy has worked out. The pit crew got it right on the strategy, and as he comes through the final corners, he has been untouchable. He has been the master in the rain, and he will come across the finish line to take the win for Cohesion Simsport in round number 2. A brilliant drive from Phillips in the end, and as we look further back here, we can see Andres Mesa, the Spaniard here from Distinct GG. He tried everything in the end, but he's going to have to settle for second place, which is not a bad performance, all things considered. A brilliant start to the season for Mesa. And then we have got a 34-second gap back to Faulkner, who's making his way through. But we look at Seedorf versus Prendergast. No change between the two of them so far. We will come back to them very shortly. But meanwhile, we look at the Irishman here, the other Distinct GG driver up in our leader group of Ethan Faulkner. Another great result here as he comes through the final set of corners here. The Irishman comes through to complete his race, and as he makes his way around right now, a P5 in race number 1, a P3 in race number 2. It is the case that the Ferrari shall rise once again as the Irishman makes his way home, and in the end, in the battle for P4, whilst Prendergast threw everything at him in the end, it looks as though as they come out the final corner, it will be Lucas Seedorf who holds on to P4, only in the end an 8th of 8 tenths of a second ahead of Prendergast, who comes home in P5. A brilliant drive there as both drivers, I think, decide to do a little bit of spin across the line. And here's Piringer. He's got Fox over the back of him. And remember, Fox lost out earlier on. It's a drag race to line between these two, but Piringer brings home P6 ahead of Marcus Fox in P7. And then it will be Paco Lara, who's in P8, just missing out in the end. It's Adrian Loisinger in P, what I believe is P9, unless I'm very much mistaken. And then it's Andre Jacqueline in P10. My goodness, what a way to end the race in the end. But congratulations to all of our drivers. Do not go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be bringing you those post-race interviews very shortly, within the next 2 to 5 minutes, and you will not want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's start conducting our post-race podium interviews, and we start off, of course, with our race winner, the number 26 car of Harry Phillips. Good evening, Harry. Can you hear me?
Evening.
Harry, congratulations on the win in the wet at Zolder. How does it feel to have taken the win and be the rainmaster for this race?
It feels really good, thanks, Paul. I've put a lot of preparation into this one race. The Bentley is really, really good here, which is a stark contrast to Donington. Donington is not the best track for the Bentley, to say the least. But yeah, the rain, unbelievable. That's my first wet win in the Bentley. Really, really proud of that.
Well, it was looking phenomenal throughout. I mean, just taking a step back before we even got to the race, qualifying on pole in the end by, I think it was half a second, if not greater. Just take us through that pole lap. That seemed to be a pole lap out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was. So I went out of the pits pretty early. I think you might have saw. I really wanted to get out there, get out of traffic, make sure I have a good few laps to myself to kind of prep myself up for the big hot lap. This track really requires a lot of knowledge on the track limits. If you know where they are exactly, you can gain like a tenth in the chicane, at the first chicane, and then at least 2 to 3 in the next chicane. Sector 2 is really where it's at when it comes to track limits. I took 2, I believe, laps, maybe including the out lap as well, to get myself up to speed with those track limits. I got 2 invalids. And then on the 3rd lap, I believe, yeah, full throttle, got it in the end. 27.0, quite happy with that. I had another 2 tenths in me, but as you saw, maybe you might have seen in practice, but really happy with that result.
Yeah, so we definitely saw, I think it was a 26.8 from yourself in practice, which nobody came near, but we did have questions over whether people were running race sims in terms of their practice, or whether they're in qualifying. In the end, it definitely materialised that it seems as though you were in qualifying trim and everyone else just couldn't seem to match it. So then, phenomenal stuff in qualifying, but then to go into the race, it just seemed as though it worked out perfectly for you. Right at the start, held off the early pressure from the drivers around you, and then just broke off into the distance. Was the game plan always just to make that early break and then manage the gap, or were you constantly at that 100% really trying to push that gap? Because the gap got up to, I think at one point, 15 seconds before Mesa started to bring it down just a little bit around the 40-minute mark. It started to come down a little bit.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The game plan today was to break away from the rest of the pack, just have a nice calm race, get as far as possible. My strategy wasn't probably what Mesa was doing. I believe he was, I think he pitted at the very, very end, if not the final lap actually. I was running a little bit less fuel, because the Bentley actually likes a little bit less fuel, doesn't like a full tank, especially in the wet. The rear just is way too happy. So the whole plan was for that race was just to underfuel a little bit, get about 90% of the way there, come in for a little bit of a drink, and then hopefully come out of the pits and have no issues and no problems, no incidents throughout the race. Big shout out to the back markers. They were really helpful in that race. I didn't have any trouble getting past. They were really had a common sense head on them.
Oh, it definitely worked out for yourself, and that was one of the big concerns we had when you did go into the pit stop. We saw Mesa go longer and longer and literally leave it until the last lap. We were wondering whether it was the case that perhaps because you'd had to clear some of the back markers, which we did see happen to Prendergast, where he ended up losing time and having to clear drivers. We're wondering whether you might have experienced the same fate and then just see Mesa come out just ahead of you, but it wasn't to be in the end, and it was brilliantly executed. So I've got to ask you now, as we look ahead to next week, Brands Hatch, can we expect another showing from the Bentley?
I think so. Brands Hatch is probably my second favourite track after Zolder, actually. It is obviously my home track. Brands Hatch, I'm pretty strong there, but I don't like to put anything out there too soon, so we'll see how it goes. The guys around here are absolutely rapid, so it'll be a good fight.
And then the one last question I do have, given the fact that it didn't quite go well in terms of communication to the pit crew with regards to the tyre changes, what was the difference? Did you give them all a little bit of a knock on the head following Donington?
Yeah, I gave him a good shout down the radio. I've also equipped a better race engineer who actually knows how to set up, because I was working alone last race, and I tend to make mistakes when I'm on my own, especially when it comes to strategy and pit stops. But getting out on track, having a good race engineer, someone who knows what they're doing, really helped me today.
Oh, well, that's brilliant to hear. Well, we look forward to seeing you in a week's time at Brands Hatch, but until then, enjoy the victory champagne, or whether it's champagne or a cup of tea, enjoy it, and congratulations once again on the win at Zolder.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul.
No problem. Have a lovely evening. Well, you could hear there from Harry Phillips, very happy with his performance, and as he said it himself, very proud that won his first ever win in the Assetto Corsa Competition, in a competition race or in a league race, and very pleased. He just seemed to nail every aspect today, whether it was the strategy, whether it was qualifying, whether it was just his outright pace. He was untouchable, and as he's saying there, looking forward to Brands Hatch with the new pit strategist there, being able to work together with pit strategist to set the strategy up. He is going to be looking very strong, but still, we do have, from one strong driver to another, we do have to now come over to Andres Mesa, the number 91 driver, who by no means is a slow driver. He's a very fast driver, and I think we'll have a lot to say. Hello, Andres. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah. Nice and clear.
Andres, P2 today. A good drive. How do you feel about the second place at Zolder?
Yes, thank you. It was. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Yeah.
And I'm seeing in the Twitch chat we've got a good number of your colleagues from Distinct GG tuning in, particularly CJ Mac 92 on the Twitch chat there, and saying that he's very happy to hear your post-race interview because Andres and Ethan are teammates. But what was that I was going to say? Just take us through it. It didn't seem to work out as well as it could have in qualifying. Put yourself on, I think it was the second row in the end alongside your teammate.
No, I could have got a better lap, definitely, but the traffic was really hard, and I think I invalidated my last lap, which was gonna be a bit faster, but maybe P2. That's all I could have got, not much.
Well, that's fair enough. And with the traffic, I mean, whilst that did hold you up in terms of qualifying, you didn't hold back any punches at the race start, very quickly jumping up to P2. Just take us through that start, because you came through the field very quickly.
Yes, I think I got alongside the Ferrari, Sido. I think he went on the brakes quite early, yeah, and I just took the inside and I went through.
And then from that point onwards, when you got through, were you trying to put the pressure on early regards to Phillips, or was it more about trying to manage the pace given the conditions?
Management, pretty much, because he was at the beginning, especially, he was in a different class. Harry was insane. Congratulations to him.
And we do have to ask, with regards to your strategy, so we saw you pit literally at the last possible moment on the final lap. Was that in the hope that perhaps Phillips had made a mistake or been held up in traffic?
Just to try something different, but the gap was too big to try something, to be honest.
That's fair enough. Still a very good drive. And now looking ahead to a week's time, Brands Hatch. Good or bad? Are you looking forward to it, or perhaps not as good a circuit as some of the others?
Yeah, good. I think it should be good for me. I like Brands Hatch, yeah. I think it should be good for the Aston as well. We'll see what the conditions are like, though.
Well, congratulations once again on the second place today. Still, I believe you'll be our championship leader after the opening 2 rounds, and we look forward to seeing what you can achieve at Brands Hatch in a week's time.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.
Have a lovely evening.
And you, thank you. Bye.
We could hear there from Andres Mesa saying that he gave it his all today. Didn't work out in qualifying due to the traffic he experienced. But outside of traffic, a lightning start, and as he was saying there, going around Seedor, around into the opening corners and getting into that second place, and just having to manage his pace through to the very end. He tried the ultra late stop, literally stopping on the the final lap to try and find a way to be able to jump past Phillips in case Phillips had an incident, alternatively had been held up in traffic, but it just wasn't to work out for the distinct GG driver. But coming from one distinct GG driver to another, we'll be shortly going to Ethan Faulkner, but before we do, it's one of those situations where I think we are definitely starting to look at a rivalry building between Mesa and Phillips, because both of them very fast drivers. They seem to have been in a little bit of a world of their own in terms of pace thus far. Not to say the rest of the field cannot chase them down, but after 2 rounds after the first quarter, they do seem to be the favourites based on my personal analysis. But now we must come over to our P3 man of Faulkner. It's time to have a chat to the Irishman. Hello Ethan, can you hear me?
Hello Paul.
So Ethan, another brilliant drive from yourself. P3 today, how does it feel to have come third at Zolder?
Just glad to finish. Really, it was just a quiet race for me, just kept the head down, avoid mistakes, and that's really how you get up on top.
Well, it definitely looked like one of those ones where you just simply put it to the grindstone and worked it through. But just taking a step back, qualifying, locked out the second row for Distinct GG with your teammate Andres Mesa. How did it feel to go out there and qualifying in those dry conditions and set that lap to get you on the second row?
Didn't expect it, just came out of nowhere. I did feel it was probably one of my best laps ever in qualifying, so usually I would be a bit off, and then the race I would do better. So I think to pull it off in qualifying, then have confidence in the race, it felt even better for a chance to be in the top 3. So, and here I am.
Oh, it definitely worked out for yourself. And at that race start, you didn't have the best of starts compared to your teammate. Just take us through what happened, because we saw you drop a little bit of a way back and then have to sort of find yourself back into, I think it was P5 effectively, where you had to recover to.
I think at the start, who came second? Was it Zolder?
Second in qualifying was Lucas Zolder, yes.
Yeah, I did sort of tap the back of him quite badly, which I had a bit of damage, because I didn't really expect him to break very early, that early than expected, but we didn't crash, so it wasn't really my worry, but yeah, then one Ferrari lost, and then another Ferrari I had, can't remember another name, got through, so my goal was just to try and keep up with him. And then, like, he managed to pull up, like, 6 seconds in front before the pit stop, so I think once he pitted, I think, like, halfway through the race, and I just tried to push hard with lighter fuel and not yet the pits, and I had clear air, so I managed to pull off brilliantly.
Well, it definitely worked out for yourself, and we did have that major moment at the start where it was yourself, Zolder, and Kieran Prendergast, the other Ferrari driver, where you guys went 3 wide down into what was the Kleiner chicane, or turn 5, the first chicane. Just take us through what was going through your mind at that 3 wide moment into probably one of the tightest corners on the calendar, let alone the circuit.
I didn't know it was a 3 wide. I knew it would be kind of risky to overtake one car. I didn't know it was 3 wide. I did kind of went on the grass, so yeah, risky, but I managed to avoid collisions, so we all did. So we managed to avoid not doing a Hamilton and Verstappen moment a couple days ago.
And I do have to ask, with regards to the strategy, when you were going around, it was very consistent pace through and through. It was very notable. Were you trying to time yourself to, say, Prendergast, who pitted the earliest of the lead group, or was it just a case of you were trying to go as long as possible and then think, right, it's my time? Or were you gauging yourself to somebody else?
When I saw him pit early, I just thought I was just going to go all the way and just go until I ran out of fuel. But I didn't run out of fuel and then pitted. I actually had a feed up spare because there were a couple of back markers I had to deal with, so I went like, nope, didn't want to deal with that, so I went in the pits. And I also was going to try and help Andres because I came out ahead of Phillips when he did his pit stop, but then he didn't really catch up or anything for like a couple laps, so it was kind of pointless doing that. Otherwise I would lose time.
I see, and no, it definitely makes sense. And in the end, you were rewarded for it with the P3. And now we look forward to round 3 in a week's time. Brands Hatch, how are you feeling for the British circuit?
Bad. I mean, I haven't raced in Zolder in ages, and it was good to drive it, especially as the Ferrari isn't really good. But I think Brands Hatch, I haven't driven it even more than Zolder, so I just have to practice a lot of it to be good. And I do think the Ferrari is strong around Brands Hatch, so confident-wise, it should be a little bit higher than Zolder.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing you out on the British circuit. But until then, congratulations on the 3rd place, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Thank you, Paul.
And from all
See
the
you
best.
then. Best.
Well, hearing there from Ethan Faulkner, very happy with his performance and that attitude of essentially turning up and just giving it his best and not expecting too much from himself, just where the lap came from in qualifying, as he said, out of nowhere, but still a very good lap. And whilst he hasn't driven Brands Hatch in some time, I definitely think the distinct GG drives of Mesa and Faulkner are going to be two to contend with when we take to the British tarmac in a week's time. But of course, the big question will be, will it be another race winner, 3 winners in 3 races, or will we see a repeated winner? Will we see some shocks? Will we see another face come out of nowhere and get up into that battle for the top 5 positions? We will have to wait and see. But with our interviews concluded, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out at our Next Gen Racing website, I should say. That's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, the Next Gen Racing Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. I also want to give a quick big thank you to our partners. That's the SimGrid, thesimgrid.com, and also Coach Dave Academy, or CDA in short. That's CoachDaveAcademy.com, for them working with us tirelessly to put together this series and run it from start to finish. Without them, things like this would not be possible, and we're very grateful to have them on board. And of course, to you guys and girls, the viewers, without you tuning in, it would not be what it's come to be, such a fantastic series. But now we must look forward to round 3 in a week's time. Reserve the date, September the 21st, 2021. We take to Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit for the 3rd round of the 8-round calendar. You will not want to miss it. But until then, I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. We have been Next Gen Racing, and until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay smiling, stay positive, but remember, most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.